Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin this morning, I just wanted to mention that Mrs. Brandenburg and Mr. Webb are not able to be here today due to a work conflict. Agenda item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
All those in favor? Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. I just had one little small comment. I think Mr. Walker in here is labeled as Mr. Walter. If we could just make sure that he's taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0-0. The next item is to establish the agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Agenda item 2.05, recognitions. We have 2 recognitions this morning, and the first is Frank Hebron Harmon in South Shore Elementary.
Good morning, President Korbalak, Vice President Nally, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. I'm Mary Austin, District Coordinator for the International Baccalaureate Program, and I'm pleased to be here to present this morning's first recognition. Before I begin, I'd like to ask the members of the board and Dr. Arlotto to come forward. First, I want to thank the board for its ongoing support of our International Baccalaureate Program. In the 15 schools across our system, there are approximately 14,000 students in pre-kindergarten through 12th grade participating in our IB primary years, middle years, and diploma programs. No other school system, locally or nationally, has engaged with IB at this level, and that is particularly exciting given our school system's critical focus on elevating all students and eliminating all gaps. Last spring, teams of educators sent by the IB organization spent 2 days in Frank Hebron Harmon and South Shore Elementary Schools, our 2 most recent IB Primary Years Program candidate schools. During the 2 days, trained IB educators spoke with staff, students, and parents, visited classrooms, and reviewed the IB Primary Years Program of Inquiry that teachers at each school collaborated to create in order to engage all students at high levels. In September, we received the official news from IB that our schools have been authorized as IB World Schools. As a result of this process, parents and students can be confident that our newly authorized IB World Schools have a commitment to the IB philosophy with a focus on international mindedness, a rigorous, comprehensive curriculum encouraging student curiosity and inquiry, teachers, leaders, and staff trained in the IB program and philosophy, school leadership and administrative structures that serve its mission and support the IB program, a comprehensive plan for implementation and sustainability of the IB program. In her congratulatory letter, IB Chief Operating Officer Dr. Siva Kumari wrote that our new IB World Schools are now part of a global community of schools committed to developing knowledgeable, caring young people who will be ready to negotiate their futures successfully and make contributions resulting in a more harmonious and peaceful world. We certainly agree. At this time, we'd like to recognize the principals and IB coordinators of our most recently authorized IB Primary Years Program World Schools. As they come forward, please join me in congratulating on behalf of their staffs and students, Principal Rebecca Blassing-Game-White and IB Coordinator Aaron Foxman from Hebron Harmon.
Congratulations.
Principals Rachel Amstutz and Stacy Shaffrin, and IB coordinators Michael Foxman and Christina Reeder of South Shore Elementary. Thank you.
Very exciting.
Big deal. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Who wants to hold the banner?
Let's get to it.
Probably gonna have to move it down this way.
Upside down.
You don't want it upside down.
Yeah, that would not be good. It'd be
Christina, you want to do that one?
All right, guys, we're too many people on this side. Can we get us now maybe on this
Are
side?
you too short? Oh, I get to stand back,
Yeah.
Becky.
Make sure we can see everybody here. Miss Chaudhry, I'm having trouble seeing. And let's see if we can get somebody just peeking through a gap here. Okay, I think everybody can peek through a gap. Miss Richie, I see. All right, here we go, folks. We're gonna take 3 photos. Looking this way. And one more. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kate Gilbert, Regional Assistant Superintendent for North County and Chesapeake Region. I have the pleasure of introducing this morning's second board recognition. Exactly 9 months ago today, I stood before you as we celebrated Linthicum Elementary School for being named a 2014 Maryland Blue Ribbon School. I said then that I was confident that when National Blue Ribbon Schools were announced, Linthicum would be on the list. And so here we are. 8 days ago, U.S. Education Secretary Arne Duncan announced Linthicum Elementary as one of 337 National Blue Ribbon schools across the country. I spoke in January about Linthicum Elementary's high academic achievements and the fact that the school has virtually no gap between all students and those on free and reduced price meals. Today, I'd like to focus on the incredible collaboration that exists in the school. That partnership exists not only among the staff, but it extends to parents, guardians, community, and business partners. Dr. Arlotto, I have heard you say many times that everything that happens in the world of education must ultimately point to the classroom, because it is in the classroom where the gaps are closed and success is achieved. That is exactly what happens at Linthicum Elementary School, where there is no I, but only an incredibly powerful attitude of we that begins with Principal Fran Nussel and permeates every hallway and classroom in the school building. Continuing along that same theme of teamwork, it is appropriate also to recognize Associate Superintendent Kathy Herbert, who worked closely with Linthicum Elementary and other cluster schools as Director and Regional Assistant Superintendent for many years. And since I am so good at predictions, I'd like to try my luck again. Linthicum Elementary is the first school in the North County cluster to receive a state and national blue ribbon, but I don't think they'll be the last. This school is a model for other schools in the cluster and in the county and is setting an example for others to follow. Mrs. Nussel is here today with some of her school staff, parents, partners, and students to accept the special banner that we have for them to hang in their school. As the school team and Mrs. Herbert come forward, Please join me in congratulating them for everything they do for children each and every day.
Thanks. Oh, thank you. It is a team. Congratulations. Hey, congratulations. Great job. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Well, this is an honor. You'll appreciate it. That's what I do. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's a great thing. You'll really appreciate it.
Some,
Congratulations. Thank you. Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Good job. Good job. Thank you very much. Thank you.
good luck, everybody. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely.
Mike, do you want us to go up on the top? Congratulations. The board members to go there, and then we can kind of get everybody in?
If possible. If it's not too bad.
I think that might be better. That might be better. We're gonna go up on the top. We're gonna go up. Yeah, we're gonna go. So we're gonna call people. Right. We're gonna go up top. We're gonna go up top.
Try to get everybody in pictures. Guys, the board members have kind of gone up since you guys can fan out a little bit. I can use a couple more folks on this end. Get this very. Make sure I can see everybody. Might have trouble seeing you in the back. Okay, just kind of peek through a gap for me. And board members, everybody on the back, if we could just kind of shift over Ms. Chaudhry's direction just a little bit. Okay, thank you. All right, that looks great, guys. Here we go. 3 photos. Close up on the ends for me. Here we go. And just make sure I can see you behind this muscle here. Okay, here we go. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item 2.06, Educator of the Month, Mrs. Nally.
Thank you. Teaching is one of the most challenging and complicated jobs within our society today. It demands broad knowledge of subject matter, curriculum, and standards. To be highly effective, one must possess enthusiasm, a caring attitude, and a love of learning. Knowledge of discipline and classroom management techniques and a desire to make a difference in the lives of young people are also included in the definition of an effective teacher. These attributes can be placed into specified categories of academics, professional ethics, and personal commitment, which truly define our Educator of the Month for October. Lisa Patty, 6th grade language art and literature teacher. At Annapolis Middle School. Mrs. Patty displays her academic prowess through her thorough knowledge and implementation of the state's curriculum and Common Core standards. She is incredibly knowledgeable of the content and enthusiastic in her delivery. Her engaging personality and teaching style holds her students' attention. During classroom instruction, one can sense her exultation as she shares her love of literature. Lisa installs a thirst for knowledge in her students and challenges them to become independent thinkers and learners. Mrs. Patty has a transparent classroom with clear outcomes and objectives, as well as an agenda that reflects balanced literacy. She uses research-based strategies to engage and motivate all students. Her mantra for her students is, "Be the change you wish to see. Strive for excellence daily." Her effective classroom management and organizational skills are a hallmark at Annapolis Middle School. Throughout her tenure at the school, she has been applauded for her ability to write and execute lessons deeply rooted in the middle years program philosophies. She has facilitated professional developments on MIP, literacy, and effective use of technology in the classroom. She has been observed by other county teachers as a master teacher in an exemplary classroom. In addition to her classroom duties, Lisa wears many hats, such as advisory teacher, avid site trainer, and middle years program leader. She is an international baccalaureate certified teacher and still finds time to work towards her national board certification. Lisa Patty, you are the consummate professional. You have truly embraced the mission statement of Annapolis Middle School in your continual STRIDE stride to greatness through social contribution, teamwork, responsibility, integrity, diversity, and excellence. So, on behalf of the Board of Education, the students, teachers, and staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, it is my distinct pleasure to honor you as Educator of the Month for October 2014. Congratulations. And please join me up front. On behalf of us, of the board, I would like to present you with a certificate and a bell. And tell me, how did they get you here today? Was there a little lying involved?
I don't know if there was lying. Well, for the IB presentation, and since I've been involved in the IB, it was a total plausible lie that I was coming to talk about the teacher's perspective.
Very well.
Executed very, very well.
Oh, great, great. And who's here with you today?
My husband, my brother, my parents, my grandmother, and my in-laws.
Oh, wow. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And who else from your
Oh,
staff?
I'm sorry. My principal, Dee Kelly, our literacy coach, Jenna Lero, and our IB coordinator, Joanna, let me say your name correctly, Millett? She just changed.
Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you so much, and we'll be taking pictures afterwards.
I just want to remind everybody that pictures will be taken of all of our employee and volunteers of the month at the break right after the CAC report, so please hang around till then. The next item on the agenda is item 2.07, Employee of the Month, Mrs. Birch.
Thank you. Today, we recognize an employee in our school system who is described by her principal as the beacon of consistency and professionalism in providing a superior level of office management while serving in the Secretary 2 position. Dawn Smith, Solly Elementary School, exemplifies the positive and caring school environment that is obvious for all visitors who enter the building. The most amazing thing about Mrs. Smith is her knowledge of everything involved in the operation of a school. This includes everything related to county policy, school security, and available resources. Whether it's a payroll question or the steps involved in student registration, one can be certain that Dawn will be able to resolve the issue. If not, she knows who to contact at central office to find the answer. Staff members, as well as her principal, rely heavily on her expertise in solving the myriad needs at a large elementary school of nearly 700 students. The operation of a school the size of Solly requires expertise and patience in handling a multitude of tasks. Mrs. Smith is exemplary in seeing the big picture of prioritizing the needs at any given time. She's proactive in reminding her principal to complete important tasks, such as reports due to central office and updating school security protocol. Her organization and dedication is outstanding. Mrs. Smith is astute in all facets of her job and has shared her expertise and dedication with other secretaries whom she has trained over the years. She has touched many lives and impacted the careers of her coworkers over the years. Dawn Smith is adept at handling situations, such as upset parents, in a polite but firm manner. She is able to diffuse a volatile situation and provide a listening forum for people that need to be heard. Mrs. Smith is usually able to resolve an issue in a kind and professional manner. She is often sought out by staff and students in need of encouragement and always has a smile to share. Additionally, Dawn is part of the hospitality committee and helps organize events such as breakfasts, weddings, or baby showers, and is the first to offer condolences and assistance when a tragedy strikes. Dawn is the school's most intimate link to the Solly community. She's an outstanding employee, a pillar of the community, and the heart and soul of her school. Dawn Smith, it is with humility and reverence that the principal, the school counselor, and the entire staff at Solly nominated you for this recognition. You were nominated for your amazing ability to multitask, your excellent job performance, and for going above and beyond to help those in need. And it is with great pleasure that the Board of Education recognizes you as Employee of the Month for October 2014. Congratulations, and please join me up front.
Congratulations. I have for you a certificate, Dawn, that says that you're the Employee of the Month. It says a few of the nice things, and a bell that's engraved with your name. So I wanted to ask you, how did they get you here today?
You told me I had a training I had to go to.
Okay. Okay, so this was the overview. We've now told you how wonderful you are, and we thank you so much for all that you do for the kids at Solly, for the kids in our county. And who came with you today?
I have my current principal, Mr. Haney, and two of my former principals, Mr. Wagner and Mrs. Huey. My friend Glenn, he's a former teacher, guidance counselor, Carrie Grantham, my daughter-in-law, Tina, my husband, Greg, and my friends, Debbie and Schaefer and Pat Dudley.
And they all tricked you.
Yeah.
But it was out of love. It really was. Thank you so much for everything you do, and congratulations.
Yeah.
The next item is 2.08 Volunteer of the Month, and I have that one today. Today, the Board of Education is pleased to honor an outstanding volunteer who is neither a student's parent or grandparent. She is simply the epitome of a dedicated volunteer. For over 10 years, she has used her gifts to enrich children's lives by providing costumes for the Brockbridge Elementary School Drama Club. From Willy Wonka, 101 Dalmatians, Aladdin, and Pirates to last year's At the Bandstand, Mrs. Polly Barnes makes sure the show goes on as smoothly and with as much magic as possible. Every year for more than a decade, Mrs. Barnes has maintained her constant, unassuming presence for the 2nd to 5th graders of the Brockbridge Drama Club. She begins researching and planning the costumes, props, sets, and many other behind-the-scenes jobs long before the students join the club. Mrs. Barnes studies the play, goes through her lists of prior year's costumes and props, then hits the local thrift stores, yard sales, and scours catalogs for the perfect items. She cleans and irons trampled costumes, alters poodle skirts, stitches lion suits, and creates Dalmatians from sweatshirts and felt, and creates new costumes as needed. Each is expertly tailored for every chorus singer and lead role. Mrs. Barnes gives countless hours to attend every rehearsal where she studies the script, analyzes what props are needed for each scene, and choreographs the scene and prop changes. As Mrs. Barnes' steadfast leading man, Mr. Barnes is a familiar presence who delivers the racks of costumes, each carefully organized and tagged. He is nearly as tireless as she, as he creates fabulous props and builds imaginative set pieces. Kindergarten teacher Susan Wallace writes, "Our drama club is a profound opportunity for our students to experience the joy of performing on stage before a live audience. Mrs. and Mr. Barnes provide the support that allows the children to concentrate on their performances with confidence. They have given so much to our school through their love and commitment to our students. For many students, I feel no one is more deserving of this award." Julie Hummer, PTA president, said, "Without Mrs. Barnes' skills and organization, the show truly wouldn't go on. Her dedication to the students is evident in the success of the Drama Club program and every performance. Indeed, her creativity and skill has made amateur elementary school performances into magical events for hundreds of Brockbridge children. In addition to the children's broad smiles and quick thank yous, I hope she does realize and how much the impact her hard work and that of Mr. Barnes is appreciated by the entire Brockbridge community. Bravo, Mrs. Barnes. Would you please come forward? With great appreciation." Certificate you can take with you. And can you tell us how they got you here today?
They're going to talk about the Brockbridge Drama Club. And this is a complete surprise.
And who's with you out in the audience?
Some of the, Mrs. Ungerholz was the first director of the Brockbridge Drama Club, and the teachers and they are now working with the group. Very special people.
So what's the play this year? Do we know?
Not quite sure.
We're allowed to tell?
Somebody with
Pirates too. Okay. Well, as a former drama student and a drama mama, I'm very grateful for the costumers, and I know how much work that you do, so we really appreciate it.
It's just a lot of fun. Appreciate what the children do to get ready and all the parents. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to 2.09, School and Community Highlights. Do any of my fellow board members have anything to share? Mrs. Ritchie.
Just as everybody, as teachers get professional development, board members also go to professional development. And this past weekend, we were able to go down to the MABE, Maryland Association Boards of Education's annual conference, where we get to have an opportunity to talk to colleagues from around the state and to share information and to gather information. And we were greatly honored to be able to have Dr. Freeman Herbowski as one of our keynote speakers. And after you hear Dr. Herbowski speak, then you just get fired up. And his message really to all of us was that it's, the old adage of "it takes a village" is absolutely true, and that if we want to be able to have students excel, that we all, not only the educators and the people that are in this room who are dedicated to education, but all of us in the communities and at home need to really instill in our children the love of learning. And so that was a really great inspiration to be able to, helps to recharge you and revitalize you and make you feel like you're really doing a great thing. So I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to be able to go there and to do that and to spend time with our colleagues and to learn and to share from each other. So I want to thank you for that opportunity for professional development.
Dr. Arlato.
Yes, it's been several weeks since we were last together, and I've had the opportunity to engage in lots of exciting things. Just a couple of highlights. On the 20th of Saturday, September 20th, I was able to participate in the North County High School homecoming parade, where I was one of the grand marshals, and that was quite a treat. Lots of fun. The band was wonderful, and the community came out to wave and support the kids as they marched. Plus, we had many, many, many of the North County elementary and middle school students participate in that homecoming parade. That was a lot of fun. On the Tuesday the 23rd, I was able to go up to MSDE and witness and participate in Sue Myers, the principal of Mills Parole Elementary School, where she was named the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals National Distinguished Principal of the Year for 2014, which was quite an accomplishment. That was a lot of fun. Also was able recently to participate in the ribbon cutting for for Monarch Global Charter. And that really celebrates those students, that staff, the community, and certainly the partnership we have with the Children's Guild. Yesterday was our awards program for Harvest for the Hungry, and recognizing all the wonderful work of our schools and communities with regard to raising money and awareness and food for the Harvest for the Hungry campaign and the food bank here in Anne Arundel County. It's a kickoff for next week is a kickoff for our 2014 campaign. We have won as an entity, as an LEA for the last 6 years, I think it is, if I have that right, last 6 years, Ms. Tudor. And so I'm confident we'll have year 7 under our belts in no time. So I thank you for your support. Not only does it show that we are a system that cares about teaching and learning and the movement of our students forward, but we are a system that cares about each other, that cares about people, because people make the difference. And so we are a caring, compassionate community, and it's a good thing to push down into the schools and for our children to understand. That is part of the learning process. So I'm proud that we continue to participate in that. Yesterday afternoon, I got the opportunity to watch Severna Park and South River play in field hockey. Unbelievable how talented these student athletes are. It was a lot of fun. It was a hotly contested game on a beautiful day out at the newly constructed Kinder Park. And my hat's off to both those programs at Severna Park and Mr. Myers there in the back of the room at South River. Just wonderful, wonderful student athletes. It was wonderful to watch them participate. For those of you that have not been following EEE, Enhancing Elementary Education, our pilot North County cluster is well underway. We're into week 2, and things are moving along beautifully. And there's many more updates to come from that. So thank you to all who have helped put that together. And finally, for those of you that follow us on Twitter and in the news, we had a bus stolen from one of our lots yesterday. It was a nerve-wracking time for many of us in the early morning hours. And as our teams went through and did a fantastic job, and I need a shout out to Mr. Sheknovich and his team. We got the mechanics out to the bus lot early in the morning to check all the other buses to make sure they were ready to run. We had contact with all of, not just the bus drivers from that lot, but bus drivers across the entire county, had their eyes out on an APB, if you will, on that bus. We were looking for it. There were many, many people that were involved, but in particular, a shout out to the police department. The police department stepped up. I was on the phone very early in the morning, several occasions, and throughout the day with Chief Kevin Davis, who assured me, he just simply said, Dr. Lotto, we're going to find that bus. He held personnel on overnight, the overnight shift, to make sure that there were boots on the ground. As soon as daylight hit, he put the helicopter in the air, and we're able to find the bus. And it was just a well-coordinated effort. And I want to thank everybody that was involved, in particular Chief Davis and our folks in blue. You all did a fabulous job. So thank you for that.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, I'll be quick. One of the things that I wanted to echo what Ms. Ritchie said relative to professional development. I also attended MABE's annual conference, and we had about an hour and a half of Dr. Lowry's time, the state superintendent, to talk to us, and I really appreciated her drive out and her willingness to talk to us. With regards to Dr. Freeman Habrowski, one of the things that he leaves in every single speech that he has, and it was absolutely amazing, about 40 minutes or so that he talked to us. But he says at the end of his speech, and I wanted to mention it here today because I think it's just so appropriate. Watch your thoughts, for your thoughts become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits, and watch your habits because your habits set your destiny. And so I wanted to share that with you. And then on a last note, I spent about 2 hours, I guess it was, with Karma and with the liaison from the school system to our CAC. And I just want to celebrate the work that the CAC is doing and the important work that they're doing. They've settled on a couple of things that they're going to mention today in their report. But we've come a long ways, and we said this at the CAC meeting with that organization, and we appreciate every single day, at least I appreciate every single day, the work that the CAC has done and your leadership, Karma, in taking that organization forward. So thank you.
I just also wanted to echo what Mrs. Ritchie and Mr. Jackson said about professional development and thank my colleagues for actually being brave enough to go out and present at the conference. We had Mrs. Brandenburg come with Mr. Sheknovich and our County Councilman Walker to talk about the economic impact study that we did and to share that information with the rest of the boards. And then Mrs. Nally and I had the chance to share some information about what education is like around the world from her trip to Cuba and mine to India. So we had a chance to be professional developers as well as professional developees. The next item on the agenda is 2.10, the CAC report.
Good morning. Thank you for having us today, President Korbalak, and thank you for the kind words, Mr. Jackson. I'm Karma O'Neill. I serve as the chair of the CAC. At our October 6th meeting, we elected Lisa Shore and Greg Novak to serve as our vice chair and secretary for the 2014-15 school year. CAC had the pleasure to have Anthony Alston present information on his office and their plans of action. The CAC is excited to hear about the positive changes and happenings with the Office of Equity and is committed to assist his office in any way we can. Our committee discussed and voted on several topics of study, both brought forward by you, the boards, and interested parties from our committee. And we decided on 4. We're going to be looking at student expenses to study school supply lists, senior fees and costs, and the overall cost for our students to attend public schools. We're also going to look at community and outreach and implement a creative plan to help with communicating to all Anne Arundel County families, not just the ones that show up to the meetings. We're also looking at class ranking and recognition to study how class ranking is currently done and to see how we can suggest areas of change or improvement for that. And then also looking at equity, ensuring that all students have equal opportunities as well as equal promotion of the areas of study, whether it be AP, IB, PBA, the CAT systems. The committees will be meeting and preparing goals, action items, and outreach efforts. And we have, the last is we have 3 current vacancies that we'd like to fill. One in the Arundel Secondary Cluster, one in the Meade Elementary Cluster, and one in the Northeast Secondary Cluster as well. So those we hope to fill so we can keep up with our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Karma. We're going to now take a 10-minute break to do photos, and then we'll be back for the school start times report. The next item on the agenda is 2.11 School Start Times Task Force Report. And before the task force begins, I just want to say on behalf of the board that I want to thank the co-chairs of the task force, Dr. McMahon and Kathy Lane, and the entire membership of the task force for the hours that you've dedicated to this project. And we have certificates of appreciation, if you're not at your chair yet, for everybody who was involved. We're going to begin with the report, and then we're going to follow it by public comment, where speakers will be allowed 3 minutes for their comments. And I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, President Korvalak, Vice President Nally, Dr. Arlato, and members of the Board of Education. For the record, I'm Kathy Lane, Executive Director of Alternative Education, and I'll allow my colleagues to introduce themselves.
I'm Lauren Gray Hawkins. I'm the Business Communication Specialist.
Maureen McMahon, Deputy Superintendent of Academics and Strategic Initiatives.
John Pfister, Lead Budget Analyst.
As you will recall, on February 19th, 2014, Anne Arundel County Public Schools then Interim Superintendent Mamie Perkins formed a 15-person task force in response to community concerns about early start time of our high schools and its impact on student health, safety, and learning. These task force participants represented a number of community, local government, and school system organizations, reflecting a broad cross-section of Anne Arundel County. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge this incredible team who worked tirelessly on this project on many late nights, during torrential rainstorms, and throughout the summer months, volunteering countless hours, gathering, sharing, reviewing, and discussing pertinent information related to the charge they were given. We would like to thank each and every one of them for their serious and studious dedication and commitment to delivering a thorough and thoughtful analysis of this complex issue. The task force began their charge reviewing the plethora of relevant medical, social, and behavioral research regarding student sleep and school performance, as well as studies previously conducted within Anne Arundel County Public Schools and other districts of comparable size. Based on the research, the task force identified the following areas as likely to experience significant impact due to a change in school start time: student health, after-school activities and sports, before and after-school care, and transportation. In order to further understand the impact of later school start times on these areas, the task force engaged in a deep dive analysis of each area through interviews and conference calls with experts and school systems who have implemented later school start times across the country. We analyzed options considered by other school systems both regionally and nationally, including, for example, those put forth by neighboring Fairfax County, Virginia, where that school system has been engaged in studying school start times for the past 2 years. While studying the many complex elements related to the importance of a potential move to a later school start time for students, the task force discussed multiple ways to adjust the start times of high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. We conducted an analysis of the strongest data-driven later start time models proposed and adopted by other districts. From this analysis, including all the potential positive and negative impacts of moving school start times, we then proposed our own unique set of school start later options, tailored to address the unique needs of our students, families, and stakeholders in Anne Arundel County, ultimately determining that later school start times was worthy of consideration and could be achieved in an acceptable way. The School Start Times Task Force was charged with thoroughly examining start times at all levels of the school system and preparing a formal report, which was submitted to you, the Board of Education, in the form of a website in September 2014. Ms. Gray Hawkins will now offer you an overview of the task force website designed to deliver our conclusions and the journey we took to arrive at these findings via an open, transparent, and dynamic platform.
Good morning, and thank you for letting us present this website before the board today. As Ms. Lane mentioned, the task force began their work by reviewing the research on sleep and the impact of changing school start times on students and the community. The group quickly realized that each new question they asked led to a new set of resources and a new set of studies. Rather than compile a written linear report limited by the lengths of its pages and timeliness of print, the task force chose to create a dynamic website. The School Start Times Task Force website provides an interactive, living resource able to offer the depth of information necessary to understand the complex context behind changing school start times. The site also offers an extensive archive of task force meeting minutes, research, as well as resources from scientific reports to state legislation to news editorials related to the given charge. For each area identified as potentially impacted by a change in start times, the team created an overview page to synthesize their findings. Beginning with health, these consideration pages offer a succinct but comprehensive summary of research related to each topic and heavily link to the research that informed the task force. The 3 other considerations include after-school activities and sports, before and after-school care, and transportation. Throughout each page, the board and the community can see the questions that drove the task force discussion, as well as background information surrounding each issue. Because the task force recognizes that not everyone may be familiar with some of their terminology, there are definitions linked throughout the website and compiled in full on a definitions of term page. In addition, the task force created an extensive list of frequently asked questions categorized by topic to help the community better understand the current discussion on school start times and how a change may affect them. As the conversation on this topic continues, the FAQ page will grow to provide answers to new questions generated by community stakeholders. It is the hope of the task force that both the board and the community will use this site as a comprehensive resource to gain insight into the task force work and to understand the context behind the 4 start time options presented to you today by Dr. McMahon.
Thank you, Ms. Gray-Hawkins. Let me now take you through the task force proposed start school later options for your consideration. We begin with the overview page for the options, where we see the questions that drove our investigations and our best thinking, followed by each of the 4 options. Let's begin with option A. Option A offers us a high school start time of 8:30 a.m., the middle school students beginning their day at 9:30 a.m., and a range of openings for our elementary schools between 7:50 and 9:15 a.m. As you see when you compare the current start times with the proposed start times in the 2 tables shown here, in option A, our high school students start school over an hour later than they do currently, allowing for additional sleep time. Below the start time comparison tables, you will see that the task force has provided a table of pros and cons aligned with the target areas of impact around which we conducted much of our research, those of health, after-school activities and sports, before and after care, and transportation. Finally, we show you the estimated cost of option A. Please note that these costs are only estimates at this time. You will see that we do provide a link to a document that describes our estimating procedures. For option A, the estimated increased cost of almost $9 million is generated primarily from the 124 additional buses that will be needed to run this option. Let's move now to option B. Similar to our travels through option A on the prior webpage, we begin again here at the top of the page looking at the start time comparison tables. Option B is the model that offers the latest start times for our high school students. Under this option, they would start at 9:15 a.m. Our middle school students would start a bit earlier than they do now, and in some cases, some of our elementary students' days would begin before 8 a.m. This model allows for the greatest potential for increased sleep for our adolescents. Both pros and cons for this option are shown in the next table, followed by the estimated increased cost of approximately $9.4 million. Again, the cost is primarily generated by the need to employ the use of an additional 131 buses to transport the students. Moving to option C. Option C is the simplest of all the models and also has the lowest associated estimated cost. This option has all students starting school 30 minutes later than their current school start time at all elementary, middle, and high schools. It is simply a shift to move all school start times 30 minutes later. Bus transportation would shift in a similar way, with all students boarding buses 30 minutes later than their current pickup time in the morning hours and arriving at home in the afternoon 30 minutes later than they do now. Pros and cons are noted, and $600,000 is shown to be the estimated increased cost of this option. You may ask yourself why there is any increased cost if we are simply shifting start times and the associated transport of students. Uniquely, Right now, we have the luxury of using buses who transport some of our students to non-public schools in the 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. time window, to also transport a number of our high school students for their 7:17 a.m. start time prior to doing their non-public runs. Under option C, we would need a few extra buses to transport some of our high school students, as we would no longer have access to those non-public buses when we move the start time to 7:47 a.m. Finally, let's take a look at our fourth option, option D. Option D offers a shift of 30 minutes to the school day for all elementary, middle, and high school students, with an additional virtual hybrid learning component offered to high school students. Option D also allows us to increase potential sleep time over and above the 30 minutes for all by offering a hybrid blended learning opportunity for up to 20% of our high school students in grades 10 through 12. Following a program of choice style, high school students who select this hybrid option would be enrolled in 4 additional face-to-face courses, 2 blended courses that are a 50-50 mix of online and face-to-face with their current AACPS teachers, and 1 to 2 virtual, totally online courses. This virtual hybrid component would afford students the opportunity to start school at approximately 10 a.m. daily, thus allowing them both a unique educational program and additional sleep time. Option D allows all students, once again, to have the opportunity to sleep an additional 30 minutes, and it extends additional sleep opportunities to high school students in grades 10 through 12 who choose the hybrid learning component. You see that the next table offers an estimated number of participating high school students in the hybrid at both small and large high schools, followed by the pros and cons associated with option D and the estimated increased costs. We divided the costs in this option into 2 categories. One cost is associated with conducting a pilot at only 2 high schools, and the other shows the cost if we were to consider employing option D countywide. The increased estimated costs include the cost of the 30-minute start time shift across the district, which I'll remind you is the estimated cost of option C, plus the cost of running buses to pick up the hybrid learning option high school students and the additional costs of technology. $2.1 million is the increased cost if we were to increase start times at schools by 30 minutes and pilot the hybrid learning model with the extended late start time at 2 high schools. If we went countywide with option D, it would come at an increased cost of $9.6 million. These are our 4 options. Each of them offers a possible way to start high school later than our current start time of 7:17 a.m. As we conclude today's task force presentation, I return you now to our executive summary. We present you this summary and these options as our best thinking after many hours of research, analyses, and discussion. The entire task force would like to thank you for the opportunity to work on this task force, work on this issue. And again, on behalf of my co-chair, Kathy Lane, I want to say thank you to each and every one of our task force members behind us and the staff for their time and energy, commitment, and unique contributions to this effort. We're now happy to take any questions you may have. Feel free to ask any of us here at the table, as well as any of us in our extended circle here, all of these task force members. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Before we go to our questions, are there any of the task force members that would like to share anything with us? We're happy to hear from you as well. Okay. Okay. Come on up to the podium for us.
Hi, Heather McIntosh from Start School Later. I was very grateful to be asked to be part of this task force and given the opportunity to share all of the research that, that the Start School Later group, which is here wearing our black t-shirts to represent the color of the night sky when our kids are leaving for the bus. I just wanted to be brief and say that we were grateful to share the research because this gives all of us an opportunity to begin the conversation together. This is the first time where all of us, once we've read the research in this excellent report, are informed, completely informed on this issue. And as we know, information leads to good discussion and good decision making. And so I would just like to remind us that this is ultimately a public health issue, that the health and safety of our kids needs to be a priority in all thinking, and that the academic impact of a change to later start time can help AACPS reach so many of its goals, of our goals, for education, for equity, for closing the achievement gap, mood, behavior, classroom environment, all of these things that you'll see in this research, so we can work together to integrate our goals. I wanted to also say that the transportation budget being $53 million for fiscal year 2015 is an important number for people to understand, because the costs of some of these programs may seem exorbitant or they may seem reasonable, but they can only be understood within a context. So I just want to encourage everybody to go forward. Without transportation software at our use for this task force, our options for creatively exploring every possibility were limited, and the cost estimates were somewhat limited as well without software. So that's one thing that I think we should really consider moving forward. We can refine these options with community input. We can look at the costs and see where we can find efficiencies, and end up maybe with an option that we're all very happy with and very happy to work with going forward. So at this point, we're all informed, and I would just urge you that now our responsibility is to act. So I look forward to working together. Thanks.
I actually have a question. I noticed that option A and B had our elementary school students starting the earliest of the three. And I wondered if anybody could share briefly a little bit of the brain research when our elementary students might be more alert versus our high school students.
We looked heavily at this because there was an assumption made that maybe that wasn't such a great idea, putting the elementary students at the earlier time slot. I think we have the earliest one starting, a few of them start at 7:40 in one of the models. And it's interesting, when you look at the research, there's no definitive research on when the best learning time is for our youngsters. We do know that they are more awake. Based on their circadian rhythms, et cetera, they are definitely more awake earlier in the morning than our adolescents are. However, it's not clear when they learn best. So the notion that if they're more awake, it's plausible that we could send them earlier to school than they start now was what the committee went with based on all the research we read.
I don't have any other board questions, so I will go ahead and I know we have some public participation, folks that want to speak on the same topic.
We did want, in conclusion, to take you to the top of the website. Ms. Gray Hawkins will take you there and show you that there is a provide input place now for the to gather information if you so choose to use it.
And everybody can get to this from our homepage now, is it?
Yes, following the board meeting, Mr. Moser will make it live.
It's live now, he says.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Jackson has a comment.
Just a couple of things. You mentioned that you did spend some time looking at Fairfax County. Fairfax County is much larger than we are. I went over to one of their board meetings where the staff of the National Children's Hospital came and spoke to their whole community and their board. It's my understanding they have made a decision and they have moved their school start times, and they were able to do that. Is that correct, coming up this year?
So we'd like to actually let Dr. Arlato speak to that because, yes, they have made a decision. However, you might want to speak. We had a conversation. You might want to speak to the...
Yeah, as I understand it, they are, that the superintendent has asked that that her staff move forward with schools starting no later than 8 o'clock. But there is going to be significant cost. I'm sorry, earlier than 8, excuse me. But there's going to be significant cost to that. And I know that they're working through some budgetary issues in Fairfax County. But that was the last that I was told, was that that's how they're moving forward right now.
Okay. And relative to the technology piece, it's my understanding we have had technology relative to our buses, but that technology necessarily hasn't been updated. Is that in fact, can you give me ground truth, and can you give the public ground truth associated with exactly where we are with our busing transportation technology associated with this?
So the newest technology out there that does the complex busing routing based on GPS software, et cetera, we've never had that technology in this district. And it is available. It does come at a cost, and it provides, when working at its optimum level, it provides a cost efficiency, possibly, and a routing efficiency, possibly. And I say possibly because this district already is ranked third in the state for greatest efficiency and cost with its transportation. So the answer is we did look at software to a certain level, and if we were to consider start times, it would be a viable consideration to dig more deeply into looking at software. However, it's not guaranteed that this software would necessarily afford us a cost reduction or a huge increase in efficiency.
So baseline me, if you would, on exactly what we have today. Do we have technology that we're using today to route our buses, or are we doing it by pencil and paper?
So I would actually ask, if, I don't know, Dr. Arundel, if you want Mr. Dispenza or Wanda McIntyre, who was on the task force, to field that question.
I think Mr. Sheknovich will come forward and, oh, you want to, okay. I think Wanda's going to speak to that.
Wanda McIntyre, Specialist, Transportation. We currently route by local knowledge, being on the front line, maps, Google, driving out, taking a look, following buses, collecting data from our drivers, timing. We do it actually ourselves, person, on the front line. Sometimes when we Google something, it's not where it says it is. And we have to go out and double check because it's not exact. So we like to be out there. That's 85% of our job is to be on the road. And we follow these buses and we double check where they're stopping. We take a look at the locations so that we see it, every one of us. That's part of our job.
And so when you say we, how many transportation specialists make up the we?
There are 6 area specialists, 1 for each feeder, or 2. We have 2 high schools in our feeder, and then we have a specialist for special education, our 800 school buses, which we do more of a closest accessible bus stop for our special needs students. So currently there's 7 of us.
Okay, thank you very much. So if we looked at option C, which is the cheapest option, what would be the latest drop-off bus time? I'm not asking for what the latest school dismissal time would be, but I'm trying to get a sense of the sun goes down as we get closer and closer to December and January and February. What is the latest time child X, wherever they are, would be getting off of the bus if we move everything 30 minutes?
Middle school and elementary schools are our toughest dismissals. Middle school students is about a 10-minute dismissal, meaning 10 minutes from the door on the bus for them to allow us to leave. So if you were looking at a 4:20 dismissal, you're looking at a 4:30 departure. Currently, our middle school runs are about 20 minutes. So you're looking at about 4:50 dropping off students in the communities. So that would be about a 4:55 to 5 o'clock drop off.
And we'd be looking at sun in the shortest day of the year going down at what time?
About 4:40.
4:40.
4:40, yes, 4:40.
Okay, thank you.
But if I could add to that, that's, as one as you're putting those times out there, that's in reference to the standard student coming out of the class. So, but with our middle and high schools with magnet programs, those kids that are staying later, that's a separate tier of those kids. That 4th tier, as I understand it, so that's even later. So I think it's important for everybody to understand it. And that's certainly spelled out very clearly in the options in the report as one of the cons, is that not only is it all students, but in particular those students that have made those choices that are sometimes traveling the furthest will be getting home the latest. Those students that have made those choices. Is that, as I understand it?
That's correct.
So you're talking about the child, for example, that leaves Bates Middle School that has to go by Annapolis or something and then go by Davidsonville and then end up in Crofton, for example, so to speak. Thank you. Thank you again to all of you all. Thank you very much for putting the time and effort into this. It is amazing work. The options are sound and good options. There are probably some opportunities to be able to refine things if we had other things available to us today. But we appreciate, I mean, we've been on this journey for quite a long time now of taking a look at this, and we appreciate everybody's efforts. It seems like to me a very honest, good effort put forward. Thank you.
Mrs. Nally.
I have to look at this and put my elementary school principal hat on. And the latest times of arrival opening for an elementary school would be approximately 10 o'clock. Okay, looking at that, did the committee look at, I know you said earlier, they didn't really specifically look at when elementary students learn better, when is their best. My experience has been, I always tried to schedule that reading and math, and I tried to schedule that in the mornings as much as possible. However, scheduling in the elementary school, as anyone who's been involved, can be very complicated. So if they're beginning at 10, they're getting in for morning opening, et cetera, 10:15. Specials have to be scheduled. Someone has to have art, music, or PE the first hour in the morning. They've just got to do it. So these kids walk in and they have 10:15 to 11:15. Let's say they have art. So that puts them at 11:15. They've got to have lunch and recess. Parents really like them to have lunch and recess, and so do the kids. It's a highlight of the day. So some kids are going to you have to start, in most schools at Davidsonville, had to start lunch by 11:15. So you're going to have, I'm looking at putting on that scheduling. You are consequently looking at some kids who are not going to begin their academic day, what I consider the reading, the language arts, and math, till noon. I find that troubling, terribly troubling for me. Someone's going to have to show me some research, especially with me having three little grandchildren right now in elementary school, that it is okay for them to have that kind of schedule. I find that terribly troubling for option C and T, and I don't care how cheap it is. Thank you.
I understand.
Can I just, my name is Carol Streeter, can I add? I just want to add one thing that you didn't mention. You could have been at one of our meetings because those are the exact topics that we talked about. The other thing that we brought up with the elementary school kids is that you didn't bring up is a lot of them are getting dropped off at 6 o'clock because their parents are 6 or 7 o'clock. So not only are they starting at 10 o'clock, and these are why, if you look at the pros and the cons, we have outlined all of that in there because
right, I read
we
that
have
part, so
I know, but we
didn't-
wholeheartedly agree.
right.
I just wanted to also bring up the point that not only are they starting that late, a lot of them have been up since 7 because they had to get dropped off because their parents are working, and we found that very troublesome.
Now, I saw that in the report, but I didn't see the scheduling piece kind of brought in, and maybe it was discussed, but was that discussed?
Yes,
okay.
it was discussed, and what you'll see is it's only a few of the buses. Well, you can't see that from here, but it is only a few of the buses few of the schools that start so late. For every school that you want to move from that 9:30 to 9:45 start time, for every school that you want to move, you need to move the buses associated with that school. So in some elementary schools, that's as few as 2 or 3. In other elementary schools, that could be 10 to 12 buses, every bus costing approximately $60,000.
So you could look at possibly the few schools, and I don't know how many began at 9. I know 45. I know my grandchildren are a later school at 9:15. So, a few schools are 9:15 could be moved under one of these options with additional cost of a $16,000 or whatever.
That's correct.
For those schools. I mean, I'm just kind of talking out loud, but I would. That's my concern. Thank you.
We looked at that, Mrs. Nally, because it made sense that schools you're talking about, that last group, we call them Tier 4. They're that fourth tier of busing. And so we said, well, what if we just move the fourth tier elementary and middle schools into Tier 3? And John, correct me if I'm wrong, it was upwards of $9 million to make that shift.
Mrs. Ritchie?
We kind of keep going back and forth with this routing software and all this kind of stuff. You had a presentation by people who do these things, right?
The vendors.
One of the unique problems with our county is we're not a square little county like Howard County. we have water that we have to go over, and so it'd be real easy to take kids if we could do water taxis. You know, I mean, that would fit into those things, but it doesn't. And so even with the best, the most advanced, wonderfulest, that's not even probably a real word, but most wonderful software, you still have to have people who have input. You have to have, there's somebody who's going to have to do this. I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion about like UPS and because they have tracking software and stuff like that, but they're really just throwing boxes in a thing. Parents get upset when we do that. So, you know, I mean, it's a little bit different to manipulate. And so, you know, we can keep going around and around and around about this software, but we're third in the state.
With respect to efficiency costs.
To efficiency and the way that we route our routes.
Right. And what you will see on the website is you'll see the ability, and Ms. Gray Hawkins might be able to bring that up for us to see that it explains not the complexity of the bus routes, but actually the cost and how the software, the way we actually can look at software and the cost of that software. And so there's one way to look at the software where all you do is get the routing software. You're really just buying the software package, and you certainly pay a cost to get that software, and you pay an annual subscription or maintenance cost. There is also sort of the Cadillac version of that where you buy the software and you buy the equipment, the GPS tracking equipment, so that you can reroute in real time, et cetera. And that has an additional cost, and then the subscription cost to that is higher as well. However, having said that, it is plausible that it's worthy of a deeper look. The task force was charged with looking at it, and we feel like we did a first level cut at looking at it, and it has, possibilities.
Well, I mean, if I have to choose between buying software when we're already a very efficient group that's doing that and knowing the complexity of our county, and if I have to choose between buying software because whatever, or doing something else, I'm going to, because while, never in my wildest dream did I ever think that I would say it's only $9 million. But the fact of the matter is that all those little bits and pieces of money add up to our $1 billion budget.
Correct.
So it's real easy for everybody to keep saying, well, it's only this much, it's only that much, but all of those pieces add up. And unfortunately, because we don't have taxing authority as an organization, we have to go to the county council, and so we have to ask for those things, and we have to take something off the plate. When you add something, something has to come off, because they're not going to allow us to do whatever we want with everything. And there's a lot of things on the plate, and I'm not negating in any way the health and safety of children, because not only is there a sleep deprivation issue, but there's also the issue of sending kids home in the dark. We're sending kids to school in the dark, we're sending kids home from school in the dark. So, I mean, there's those issues. There's the issues of the children who are going to be home alone for longer periods of time, who may miss the bus, and now because there's no parents around, I mean, there's all kinds of issues beyond just sleep that lead to health and safety of children. When we talk about bad decision makings and stuff like that, both on the front end for the younger kids and the back end for the older kids. So, I mean, it's a very complex issue. If it was cut and dry, then 12, 14 years ago when this decision came to this board, then it would have been done already. And it's not a cut and dry issue. It's a very complex issue. And so I strongly encourage all, as much as I love getting all these emails, I strongly encourage all parents and all people who are interested in this to ensure that they send information forward on where they stand on the issue. I don't need long missives about I understand the research, I understand that, but we have to hear from everybody about, I'm sorry, other board members, I just did that to us, but you have to hear from everybody. I mean, because what happens is you have a very vocal group, which is absolutely great, but you have another group who thinks, well, it doesn't affect me, until it does. And then when it does, it's too late. So everybody needs to be aware of the issue and be voicing their opinion, and use this provide input button here so that we can get real information from everybody. Thank you.
Mrs. Burge.
I want to ask two questions. First is a clarifying question. You said that if you took away the Tier 4 schools and turned them into Tier 3 schools, it was going to end up costing pretty much almost as much as one of the first two options, and all you were going to get for it was a 30-minute delay of everyone? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had understood that correctly. Okay. I also wanted to know if you had examined at all our transportation costs as compared to other jurisdictions. because, you know, we keep talking about how, well, we could make things more efficient. It's my understanding that we already do things pretty efficiently here. I'm wondering if that was looked at.
It was looked at, and we did include the Maryland State Department of Education report on that shows that we are third in the state with respect to lowest cost for transporting per pupil in the state of Maryland. And that is available on the website right there, the 2014 state audit.
So despite the fact that we're not using transportation software to do things better, whatever, we
have a relatively low cost of transport.
Okay. Thank you very much. And congratulations, everyone, for keeping our costs down. We appreciate that because we have no money. Thank you.
Dr. Arlato.
Thank you. I just, again, Ms. Burge and others wanted to reemphasize the fact that with that state report, we are seeing some incredible efficiencies for the dollar cost in transporting our students. And so there may very well be a savings, but as I understand, as you all met with or talked with some of the vendors and looked at the options in transportation software, that they even said, well, look, you're getting a lot for your money now, so if we're able to help you, it's going to be, if there is a savings, the percentage-wise, right, from closing that gap from here to there, is going to be is not going to be a huge gap, right, for us. Because we are unique, and Ms. McIntyre points it out very clearly. This is a unique county, and sometimes you just have to have folks get on the roads. Because of the uniqueness of this county, north to south and east to west, and the amount of water, there are lots of dead ends. And sometimes that routing software, as I understand, becomes an issue because it just, either way, the routing software is going to send you down. You're going to have to turn the bus around and come back the other way because of the number of dead ends. We are going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at the possibility of software down the road. One of the things to run software well is you've got to have accurate maps. So we've begun conversations we've had conversations to continue, and I personally have had some conversations with some of the folks at the county level government where they do the GIS work. We don't do that kind of work. We're going to have to get the maps from somewhere. And so we've engaged a conversation with the folks. I know you all in transportation have had those conversations. I personally have had a conversation with some of the folks at the county government about accessing the GIS maps. And if we do go that route, they've agreed to partner with us in looking at software that might work best for us and coordinating with their data and their maps for the county government. All of that said, what I did really want to say is thank you. You all did a lot of work. I had the opportunity to sit in on the first in my previous life as the chief of staff, where I was allowed to attend the meetings, and then I became superintendent and the doors were locked on me. But I was allowed to attend the first two, and this was hard work. This wasn't a committee that just sort of sat around and talked. They rolled their sleeves up, they got active in the data, they got active in the information. They gave of their time through the summer and into this fall. And where we said we were going to meet once a month, I think it turned into much more than that. And so I really did want to say thank you and applaud you for stepping forward, for accepting the invitation as it was presented, for actively engaging in the conversations. And I think Mrs. McIntosh, you're absolutely correct. Putting the information out there, right? Having everybody looking at the same information is important so we can begin to really have some quality conversations and making a decision we think is best for our kids. So again, I say thank you.
I too want to say thank you, especially for making this report so accessible to parents and students and the citizens of our county so that they can go and look and then hit that provide your input button so that we can see what everybody's thinking, not just those of us in the room today. Okay, I'm going to call up the folks that wanted to speak on this item. And I have 6 cards and we have 6 seats, so everybody can come up. Teresa Sutherland, Lisa Pline, Deborah Wood, Janet Norman, Carrie Oakes, and Laura Booth.
Lisa Pline will not be speaking.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start with Teresa Sutherland, and You can stay seated or go to the podium, whatever you prefer.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Sutherland, and I am the parent of an exhausted 15-year-old. This board takes great pride in its STEM offering, so I wanted to focus on the S in STEM. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, science dictates that teenagers need 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep. My son has to get up at 5:45, so he would have to go to bed at 9. However, science also dictates that his circadian rhythms won't allow him to fall to sleep until 10:45, so he only gets 7 hours of sleep. And we all know that science shows chronic sleep deprivation is unhealthy in a plethora of ways. We've all heard the argument that it's a parenting problem. Stop coddling the kids. Tell them to turn off their cell phones, go to bed early, and if they don't have enough time for all their activities, cut back. But that's not the issue in my house. My son has no electronics in his room, and he could easily go to bed at 9 with plenty of time to get his homework done and all his activities. But he still won't fall asleep until 10:45, so he's still only going to get 7 hours of sleep. It's no more appropriate for me to tell him to suck it up because he'll have to get up early when he's an adult with a job than it would be to tell the 3-year-old to suck it up. There'll be no nap when you're 7. It's science. Science dictates that elementary age children wake up earlier than teenagers, so one proposed solution is to switch start times. But I think we all agree it's not safe for a 7-year-old to walk to the bus stop in the dark. And so I ask you, if it's not safe for a 7-year-old, exactly why is it safe for a 14-year-old? Because a 14-year-old is better able to avoid being hit by a car? Because a 14-year-old is better able to deal with a stranger who might approach them? Finally, the negative effects of early start times disproportionately affect those who can't afford to drive to school or aren't old enough to. If you want to close the achievement gap and help 9th graders make a successful transition to high school, start school later. The question is not whether high school should start later, it's how and when you can implement a change and how you pay for it. With regard to how you do it, even if it doesn't save money, bus routing software would likely reduce the amount of time it takes to design efficient routes and minimize the number of buses, including the 26% with less than 50% ridership. But most importantly, routing software would allow you to reduce ride times, which would in turn allow the kids to arrive at their stops later in the morning and minimize the effect of ending school later in the afternoon. I believe you need this tool to make informed decisions. With regard to how you can pay for it, you'll get an increase under maintenance of effort next year, and at this week's debate, both county executives said that they support providing funding to start school later. Keeping in mind that $5 million is only 1/2 of 1% of your budget, I am certain you have the money to do this if you have the political will to do it. And finally, the wheels of the bureaucratic bus turn slowly, so please start now to build consensus and devise solutions so you can request funding in next year's budget for this. We are depending on you to not only support, but to champion the cause of starting school later for the health and safety of the children entrusted to you. Change is hard, and big change is really hard. But you need to make this happen no matter how hard it is. You can't continue to ignore the science. Thank you.
I have Deborah Wood next.
Good morning. I wanted to bring this to an individual school, individual neighborhood, individual students, individual families level. One of the women that works with me at the Chesapeake Children's Museum lives in public housing, and on occasion has said, I can't come into work, I have a child who's sick, and it takes the whole day because she doesn't have a car. One day she came by taxi with her middle schooler in the middle of the day and said, well, it would cost me more money to take him to school, so he's just going to stay with me here for the rest of the day. And I thought about that cost, and I thought about, well, maybe I'll just drive them to school, and I didn't do it that day. But since then, I have taken a personal initiative to make sure that her kids are in school as much as they can be, even though transportation doesn't allow her to pay for that taxi ride when she can't use the public transportation. If he misses the bus to middle school in the morning, he doesn't go to school because that's an extra stop for her if she doesn't have the money to take the taxi to his middle school and then come to work too. So one of the out-of-the-box thoughts that I've had is, and it costs money, but we're talking about the health of our children, the safety of their children, and most importantly, what school is for is that they're there to learn. So why don't we have late buses in the morning, or early buses in the morning for what we used to call after-school activities. So these things that we don't want to mess up, like sports, could occur at different times during the day. Before school, the middle of the day, which some private schools have done, their after-school activities are now middle of the day, because most of the parents, guess what, work, and you don't want to send kids home to empty neighborhoods and empty homes. So that what used to be after school is in the middle of the day. And then we've had activity buses run after school. When my kids went to middle school, they could come home an hour late. That was provided for. So why not add these things, and kids can choose which activities they want to attend. Another the out-of-the-box thinking that I've had is that the elementary school kids will need child care around their 6 hours of the day if they have all parents in the house working 8 hours of the day and commuting. This will be filled in. There's a whole field called professional child care out there, and they're opportunists. They look for where to fill in, where are the needs. Now that more kids go to public preschool, their 4-year-olds are gone. So, well, we have more infants now needing care, so they get their certification to have more infants. So I'm not worried about that. That's going to fill itself in. And then just a minor science point, because I am one of the kids who played outside. It gets dark early in December. December 21st is the first day of our winter, and sun sets around 4:30. By the end of the month, it sets 10 minutes later. And when we say set, that means when you can no longer see the sun on the horizon. We have this period called dusk, where if you're ever out in it, like my grandson and I are, waiting for the lightning bugs to come out in the summertime, you can see, and it's not dark. So we're talking about a week, and then 10 minutes, it's not dark anymore.
Yes, thank you for the task force and all your hard work. My name's Janet Norman. I'm proud to be a Lifetime Achievement Award winner for the Maryland PTA. I'm here today in the middle of the day because I was able to take vacation time from my job. I was able to compete and land my job because I had a great public high school education, well rested, in upstate New York. That high school education got me into a good college, where I excelled to get into a great graduate school, where I got a Master's of Science from University of Michigan. This job has housed my family and fed my family. I fear that my AACPS 9th grader doesn't have an equal chance to compete in the same way for jobs, especially versus well-rested private school kids. At my job, I was recently trained in wilderness first aid. In it, we learned the basic assessment question, what will kill them first? Which means you don't worry about cuts and minor fractures if life-threatening hypothermia or shock is about to set in. It's a good rule to remember, what will kill them first? For AACPS start time sleep deprivation, will it be obesity, depression, suicide, failed academics and life on the streets or prison, risky behavior, impaired driving, and teen pregnancy? I've seen the research and know that there's no valid excuses not to act, but this year my family is living the hellish existence of a 9th grader's 5:45 a.m. wake-ups until we ditch the 6:20 a.m. bus to the less advantaged students and drive him in each day for 25 more minutes of sleep. Still hellish. Great 8th grade achievements don't average out with crappy 10th, 11th, or 12th grade performance. It doesn't work that way. His high straight A's in middle school means squat now that you're dragging him and others to mediocrity. He's purposely taking no challenging classes this year, as he's dulled, foggy, and exhausted. I might pull him out of the IB program, more attrition to your magnet program that's not earning enough of your students their IB diploma. Less than about 20% of your starting cohort gets that. This kid was previously sharp, endless energy, going for a black belt in karate, and he made the JV soccer team at Annapolis High. He's injured, so he's missing the whole soccer season. Will that kill him first? No. Missing a sports season or a slightly shorter practice times? Nope, it's a game. He goes to bed asleep, wiped out by 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. But 8 hours of sleep's not enough if you're waking him at the beginning of teenage REM sleep from 5 to 8 a.m. He says, I'm tired all the time. You're chewing him and others up, spitting them out into dead-end futures in a globally competitive world. You're also chewing up tax dollars without effective learning. As candidate George Johnson says, buildings don't teach, teachers teach. And you're giving our awesome and effective teachers brain-dead material to work with. The 2007 and 2014 audits by MSDE lambasted your repeated lack of transportation software and efficiencies foregone that are indefensible. It's time to act, so we better run and catch up for the 22,000 high schoolers.
We are already paying for the cost, just not in the right ways. I don't do my job without the proper tools, and neither should you.
Carrie.
Hi, I'm Kari Oakes, and thanks to Dr. Arlotto, Ms. Korbelak, and especially the members of the task force who I know really worked hard on this, and thanks also to members of the board for being here and listening. All I really wanted to do today was just to give a brief update on two really important statements that make the public health implications of this front and center again. At the beginning of the school year, the American Academy of Pediatrics, so the doctors who take care of our nation's children, issued a policy statement that advised that middle and high schools both should begin no earlier than 8:30. They issued a press release about this, saying that too early start to the school day is a critical contributor to chronic sleep deprivation among American adolescents. Dr. Judith Owens, who's a world-renowned pediatric sleep expert who helped draft the policy, said, adolescents who get enough sleep have a reduced risk of being overweight or suffering depression, less likely to be involved in car crashes, have better grades, higher test scores, overall better quality of life. Delaying school start times is one key factor that can help adolescents get the help they need. This comes from our nation's pediatricians and was endorsed by the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatrists who care for our country's children's mental health. Now, looking at real-world experience with these later start times, the CDC recently released results of a multi-year, multi-site study examining over 9,000 students in high schools that did move to later start times. So this study, which was led by an educator and former high school principal, showed that both grades and health did improve in these students. So attendance, standardized test scores, academic performance in math, English, science, social studies improved. Tardiness, substance abuse, symptoms of depression all decreased. Teens drank fewer caffeinated beverages. For one school district that moved its time to 8:55, which is on the far late end of the range we're talking about, there was a 70% drop in the number of car crashes involving teenagers. So now we actually have real-world knowledge of what happens for thousands of students in these communities. Based on these experiences, I think we can expect a later start time in Anne Arundel County to result in real improvements along all of these measures: mental and physical health, fewer teen car crashes, higher test scores, and a reduction in the achievement gap. You know, I think these sound like goals we can all agree they're worth investing in. And I just think it's time to set a goal for Anne Arundel County Public Schools that all students go to school at safe and healthy hours. We have sleep researchers, we have medical professionals, we have thousands of people who care about the health of the children in our country telling it's time to do this. And I just think it is. So thanks for listening.
Laura.
Hi. I wanted to thank the board for taking the time to investigate this issue. Huge thanks to the task force for the many hours that you put into researching this and trying to come up with some solutions. I don't have a high schooler, but you said it best. You said people don't care about what doesn't affect them until it affects them. I have a son who started middle school this year. I have a daughter who is 4 and will start kindergarten next year. The shift from elementary school to middle school has been a little tricky for my son. We're getting up a little bit earlier. Our whole family's, trying to get moving a little faster in the morning. But he's still young enough that I can say to him, lights out at 8:30, go to bed. And he's still young enough that he falls asleep easily. I live in fear of the time when he's going to have to get up at 5:45 in the morning so that he can catch a bus and be in school at 7:17 in the morning. Overall, we've been thrilled with the Annapolis school system. I have the county school system. When we moved to Annapolis, everybody said to us, oh, well, you can't live in Annapolis proper and send your kids to public school. You have to send your kids to private school. They won't get anything in public school. We love Annapolis Middle School. It's been great. He's had great elementary school experiences. I want his high school experience to be just as good. It's hard for me to convince him that he loves computers. His goal in life is to design computer software. Specifically, I think he wants to design Minecraft, but we're working on that. But it's hard for me to convince him that he's going to be competitive in science and technology when the science seems to be ignored in the school district. It's hard for me to tell him, that, yeah, I mean, my background's mathematics. The study of how buses, how to pick up things efficiently is a class of problems in mathematics. It's been studied for centuries. This isn't new technology. The computers that solve these problems are new, but they're doing amazing things. To say, well, we don't know if the computer can handle the fact that we have water, it can. Computers are pretty smart. They can be programmed to understand that there are boundaries that they can't go past. To say that we're not going to try, that upsets me. That scares me. Maybe when these current start times were established, they made sense. But let's face it, that was a long time ago. We didn't have magnet high schools then. We didn't have kids who were traveling the length of our fairly large county to get to these excellent programs that you're creating. We didn't have as much traffic on the roads. In the 16 years I've lived in Annapolis, Forest Drive, scary. It's not going to get better. They're going to have to get up earlier and earlier. The buses are going to have to run earlier and earlier just to keep the current status quo. And the status quo isn't working. It's broken. It needs to be fixed. So I'm urging you now, instead of waiting until it's really broken, until traffic makes it impossible to get kids to school on time, fix it now. I'm tired of hearing as a parent that, well, it's a big adjustment for the parents. We adjust. We adjust from summer to the school year. We adjust every time you guys have an in-service day and the kids don't go to school. We adjust for every early dismissal, every delayed start, every snow day. We can adjust to this, but we need you to take the action. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know we have two more people that would like to speak on starting school later. Tom Frank and Kathy Mann, come up.
My name is Tom Frank. Thank you very much. The first thing that I'd like to comment on is I'd like to recognize Dr. Tara Snyder in the back. She has been the reason that this subject matter is here. She has doggedly pursued this for year after year after year. And I would simply like to ask the school board to consider the fact that you folks need to make a decision. And I would like you to tell the public, when are you going to make a decision? On what basis are you going to make a decision? And when will that decision ultimately be made? I believe there's no reason that you can't tell the community the time schedule that you will make a decision. And as I listen to this, it reminds me of one of my favorite writers, Dr. Peggy Noonan, writes a column in the Wall Street Journal, and she talks about decisions can be made on the basis of science, politics, or razzle-dazzle. And I am concerned that you folks will not make a decision based on science. Some long time ago, I brought to you scientific articles that made this a rather straightforward decision that you could make. There's another aspect that is quite related to science, and that's the money. It troubles me that I have heard, if I've heard correctly, that you folks don't have a piece of software that is up to date, and as I understand, Dr. Alato understands the, some of the difficulties in getting a good piece of software. But I would be troubled if you did not buy a piece of software so that you could make a rational decision and make it in a timely fashion. I think it is quite clear to all folks across the country and in related counties that kids do better when they start school later. So let us know your time frame for you making a decision on this important issue. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Mahon. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for his comments. Yeah, it's a complicated issue, and I really wasn't intending to speak. I did hear the repeated comments about the efficiency of the bus system, and so I just want to make a couple things to consider. If you're familiar with the Arundel Medical Center that was downtown Annapolis, And when they built that, and it was all built, I'm sure they had a lot of people look at it. When it was finally built, they had 3 elevators for visitors. They hadn't included an elevator for the trash, nor for the meals, nor for patient transportation, nor for the operating room. So those 3 elevators, well, they commandeered one for the operating room. Those 2 elevators, you had patients, trash, meals, and visitors on those 2 elevators. So you have complicated issues, but sometimes really common things are overlooked. I think that, not to dig at the hospital, but it's what I know, healthcare, right? So then you're building the women's hospital, and they based building a 2-story hospital on the most recent, what was in the news. You know, women were going to go and have a baby, and she was going to be out the next day. When the people on the ground, the physicians were saying that's not enough. So imagine how expensive it was for them to add that 3rd floor to that hospital on a functioning hospital. It was so expensive because they overlooked what the people on the ground were saying. And I might add, because I think this is a little bit of what Mr. Wood was saying, is my brother's an EE, and he's incredibly bright. He works for a company that did the Pentagon rebuild and the Capitol Visitor Center. In fact, the architect of the Capitol called his business, said, never lose him, best electrical engineer we've ever worked with. So he's in on a meeting to build the Capitol's Visitor Center. And the phone company came and said it was going to be $1 million to do the survey. And my brother, who's not just smart, it's kind of funny, raises his hand and goes, I think you need to find yourself a new telephone company. By the end of the meeting, the survey was for free. I think that there might be some things overlooked. I think the efficiency thing, when we're 3rd most efficient, maybe we could be 1st. The reason I'm speaking, because my personal experience was, I wanted to walk my kids to the bus stop. And then I wanted to walk to pick them up. But for a long time, and my neighbors could confirm this, I had to run around my neighborhood looking for my kid because we had a lot of different bus drivers, and my kindergartner once was let off like way far away. She's just standing there like didn't know where to go. To add to that, we now have a new kindergartner on our street. Now, the buses come down and stopped in front of the houses on that street. But it has not for the last year. It has for the 15 years before. So now we have a new kindergartner who's walking fairly far down and standing on Main Street because their family's new. They've called several times and been told, no, the bus doesn't go down that road. It didn't go down that road for 1 year. For 1 year, there was not an elementary school student. So your 6 people who are tracking tens of thousands of kids aren't effectively doing so.
Are you Robin?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Board, for having this opportunity to speak. I wasn't planning on speaking, and I've heard this presentation, and I've heard a lot of the facts that have been shared throughout the way. And the only thing what feels to me that I'm walking away with is that this board it feels like their legacy is how efficient and how cheap can we have our transportation. And I'm wondering if that's what we want to be known for, is having the lowest cost transportation when we know that our health and well-being of our children are at stake. So that's what I'm wondering is, what do we want to leave our legacy? I think our legacy should be, how can we make sure, how can we set our kids up for success? And what are we doing that is impinging upon that? And I don't think it should be, well, we don't have the money, because we have a lot of money. I'm not saying that things don't have to be cut, there have to be decisions, but everything costs money. Everything that the board looks at is costing money. So to sit there and say, I don't feel we should be saying to our kids, there's a price tag on your health, and we just can't afford for you to be healthy. That's all. Thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
I just want to say I appreciate all the comments from everyone in the public, and I appreciate everybody coming out here today, because it's really good to hear from the public about what you think about everything. And we are going to work with everyone to try and see if we can come up with a solution, because we really do want to help figure out what we can do for our kids. But we also need things from you. Because, you know, I know you don't want to put a price tag on our kids' health, but we're the board and we have to pay the bills. And there is a price tag. There is a cost, and we've got to pay the bills. And right now we're in a situation where, because of our budget from last year, where the council used one-time money to pay for our teachers' salaries, we're starting out next year already in the hole by about, what's the number? $13 million. Because to pay for our teachers' salaries, they used one-time money out of our health care fund. So we don't have that money again next year. So we have to come up with $13 million just to pay for the salary that our teachers got this year. We need $13 million to be even for next year. We're probably only going to get about $5 million in maintenance of effort. So we need $13 million more to pay their salaries. So if we're going to do something that costs an extra $8 million, that's $8 million more dollars. So what I need from you is a commitment that if we're going to do something that costs money, you need to tell the people who have the purse strings that you believe that our teachers are worth $13 million and that you believe our kids are worth $8 million, because I don't have the checkbook. I don't have it. So you need to tell the people who have the purse strings, because we've cut everywhere for the last 8 years. I've been on the board for 7 years. We're down to, on our materials of instruction, I think we're at one point I was told 85% of our 2007 materials of instruction. So if you get told by your kids' schools that they don't have copy paper after January, that's why. There's nowhere left to cut. We've worked on healthcare every year. We keep working on healthcare to try and be more and more efficient with our healthcare. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep working to save costs everywhere. But at some point, things cost money. Things cost more now than they used to. So we can't do it without dollars. And I know that nobody likes to hear that there's a price on their, that we actually need dollars to do something like this. But guess what? It really does cost more money to run more buses. You can't do it for free. So if you want us to help you, we need your help too. So you need to go to the people who are in charge of the money and tell them that you don't like the way they've been doing things and you want them to do it a little bit differently, and that you think that your kids are a priority and you think that their teachers are a priority and you want them to show it in how they vote. Thank you.
I also wanted to clarify for everyone who might be watching today that we don't think the public wants us to make a decision today. If we haven't had a chance to go through this wonderful website and we haven't given the public a chance to go through the website and click provide your input. So we want to make sure that everybody has read through the material both here and there before we go and propose anything that's going to cost money for our FY16 funding. But I would echo what Mrs. Burge just said. We can ask, but we can't write the check. So we do need your help to go forward. And as the mother of a 16-year-old who gets up and goes to school in the dark and comes home in the dark, this will not be the last time I bring this up. Trust me. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. So you all, I think the point here is you all have an opportunity here coming up to vote. There are folks that are vying for certain positions on the county council in the next, 45 days? 28 days, 30 days, whatever you want to call it. Those votes that are cast in 28 days matters. They matter. Those votes matter. And so I hope you will ask the candidates that are on the ballot, because the ballot is set. A former board member here is on the ballot. I hope you will ask those individuals that are on the ballot where they stand and ensure that whomever is elected ensures your priorities are in the forefront of their mind. Thank you.
We will now move on to regular public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item that's not on today's agenda can offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. And speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion, not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. And I have 2 completed cards, Sarah Prager and Jonathan Boniface. And then I can have you speak third?
Okay.
Okay.
After them or now?
after.
Okay, all right.
Do we have a Sarah Prager?
Pardon?
Okay, she must have left. All right. Yep. Jonathan, you're up.
Good morning, President Korbelak, Superintendent Arlotto, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Jonathan Boniface, lead organizer of Build Crofton High School. First off, I would like to thank you for your motion to request a timeline from AACPS for an update to the 2006 MGT study. That is a huge step forward towards dealing with the capacity problem we have testified about at the last 8 board meetings we've attended. Sincerely, thank you. When we first started testifying about the capacity problem, we were using the projections in the 2011 Educational Facilities Master Plan. The 10-year projections were to the year 2020. Later, we testified about how the projections rose for the year 2020 when the 2012 numbers came out. And then again, when the 2013 numbers were released. Now, with the 2014 projections, the projected high school enrollments for the year 2020 have risen 2,002 enrollments since those projections in the year 2011. Every year, the projections change and rise by the hundreds. Our numbers may differ from the numbers AACPS might give you, as I am sure we are not privy to a lot of their data. We use the same numbers AACPS gives the state of Maryland in both its Educational Facilities Master Plan and its list of state-rated capacities. When there's a net gain of 435 seats of state-rated capacity over the summer, we can account for some of it, such as the new Severna Park construction, but not all of it, like the 97 seats that were added at South River, 86 at Southern, or 68 at North County. For all we know, they could be turning cafeteria space or closets into classrooms. There is a clear pattern that is apparent to anyone that looks at when looking at the AACPS numbers. Our county's public school population is growing, and every year that pace of growth increases. You, our superintendent and Board of Education, control 51% of our county budget. That is a huge responsibility being placed on your shoulders. Your decisions and careful planning will greatly influence our county's future, for better or for worse. Again, we ask you to solve the capacity problem by building a Crofton High School, and as always, we are thankful for all you do for our students. Thank you.
Reverend Tillett.
Good morning. Stephen Tillett, pastor at Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church and president of the Annapolis Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance. I have just listened to the conversation and proposal with great interest. And as Ms. Burge just said at the bottom line, it's all coming down to money. And so here's the conundrum that has kind of confused me. The past 6 months, January to June, I got to serve on the community editorial board for the Capitol, and we interviewed a lot of the candidates. And so many of them came in talking about belt tightening, and we had to become lean and more lean. But you know, you can only become so lean, and after a while, you're not cutting meat anymore, you're cutting bone. And that's pretty much where we are. The challenge is that, and I'm sorry, most of them have left, the same folks that come in and want us to spend so much money on X, Y, and Z, but they don't want to pay any more in taxes. Yes, I just used a dirty word. I know you said I couldn't use a dirty word, but I just did. Taxes, okay? But taxes is how we pay for stuff. And the bottom line is that at the current level of income that we're taking in from taxpayers, we can't afford everything we need to pay for. I remember when we interviewed the police chief, Chief Davis, and he said that they're still using some technology from the 80s and the 90s because, and have an understaffed county police force because we're not spending enough money, we're not taking in enough money to spend enough to plus it to the point where we have an adequate force. So, here's what it comes down to. If you want a Champaign County, you cannot have a Champaign County on a beer budget. And so everyone who wants for us to spend more, to build a new Severna Park High School, to add more buses, to have kids go to school later, which the science very clearly states we need to do, and the other things we need to care for. We need to go to our elected people, as Mr. Jackson just said, and say, you need to represent us. It's going to hurt a little bit more, but it won't kill us. Raise the cap, the property tax cap level so that we can take in more money and have the schools, the police, and everything else we deserve. We have to choose. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak during public comment? I don't have any cards. Janet.
Janet Norman. I just want to bring up one of Dr. Alado's proposals. The EEE proposal is that elementary education excellence, or I forget exactly what the E's stand for.
Elevating elementary excellence.
Elevating elementary excellence. The board has piloted that program with Dr. Arlado, and you are making a priority that somehow potentially $6 million could be allocated to that program without really involving the public in that decision. If you are going to spend $6 million, and we hadn't heard of that proposal before, perhaps many of us want that to go to our 22,000 high school students. So I would really encourage you to open up that proposal and your plans for it so that we can have a full community debate about it. You're spending money in various ways. There's money you're finding to spend on proposals that you like. So we think that should be opened up for full public debate as to whether that's the best expenditure of funds. I know that when you put on a job transcript, Johnny was great in art in 3rd grade. That doesn't get you far if you didn't excel in high school. So I think we've got to keep our eyes on the prize. It's not an averaging out of good grades in 5th grade and poor grades in 10th grade. Don't average out. It's your end result with how you do in high school. So I would just want to keep our eyes and our community input on what the priorities are for the school board. Thank you.
So that I can just clarify for those that are listening, there is no $6 million proposal for the EEE program. Just so that, because you put that out there, I want to make sure that I clarify that for everybody. I've not submitted any proposal to the board or anyone else for a $6 million increase to support the EEE program. It's a pilot. I will say very publicly, which I have on many occasions, that we are in my administration focusing on early education. We're going to focus on our most early learners. And that's going to be pre-K to 5. I would like more students in pre-kindergarten and in kindergarten, and we're going to look to support them throughout in reading and math right up through 5th grade. So that is absolutely a commitment that I've made and my team is supporting, but there is no proposal right now that's been put forward to the board at $6 million. Just want to make sure that it's clear for the public.
Okay, I thought the calculation of the additional teachers needed for the planning time calculated to $6 million. That was reported in the paper. And so when you develop those calculations, if you could let us all know, and we could all have that healthy debate about whether to spend on that. Thank you.
Mrs. Ritchie.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to. No, on their report card, the 3rd grade, they did great in art. It's not going to count for a whole bunch. But the fact is, if they can't read, they're not going to 10th grade. So if we can't teach kids to read, and it's not one or the other. We have to have all. We have to prepare children to be able to be successful in high school, and we're doing that now because we have these programs. You made mention that we're doing so poorly and so forth. But the fact is if we don't have children ready to read and ready to learn and be able to do that, they can't do that. I don't care what time we start school. And so if you don't do it now in the front, then you're going to lose them in the back. That's why you have the dropout rate. That's why you have the achievement gap problems. So we've got to do that, and we've got to get everybody on board with the fact that we have to have children who are ready to learn. And the EEE thing has to do with planning time. I don't know whether you know or not, but elementary school teachers aren't allowed to plan together. And that's one of the big pieces that there's going to, it's also enhancing some other educational needs in there by not taking away from them, but they don't have time to plan. They're, whereas high school teachers are able to sit and plan and do stuff together. And when they're able to sit there and plan and be able to work together, they're able to then address the needs of every child individually, as opposed to let's, try to get something done. So you know, it's not a one or all. It's not a one or you know, we're not going to take away from one to give to another. But the fact of the matter is, if you can't read, you're not going to high school anyway.
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, let's before you leave, not that it's a question to you, let's be open, and since we're all being open relative to this, there are additional associated costs with the early childhood education focus that Dr. Arlotto specifically has talked about. But those costs, for the most part, are paid for with Title I funds to create the necessary work that we needed to do to focus early education. So there are additional costs. It's not $6 million. I don't know what the exact number is, but how that's being paid for from a large majority standpoint is to get that additional planning time was constructed associated with Title I funds. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We were able to utilize some Title I funds because Title I funds, as you well know, can only be spent in Title I schools. We have several Title I schools in the North County cluster. That was one of the reasons that we chose it. So we were able to offset some of the costs. Some of the costs for the pilot did come from the operating budget, yes.
So that gets to the point of what you're talking about. What are those exact dollars and costs, and was it a decision associated with what Dr. Arlotto is trying to do and what this board has asked Dr. Arlotto to do relative to early childhood focus? That's an absolute priority that has to be done relative to what Ms. Ritchie talked about. If we don't have kids that can read at an early education and count and do math and do the necessary things, STEM won't matter when they get to high school.
Okay, I don't have any other cards, so we will now move on to action items. Agenda item 4.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Madam President, I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-0-0. Agenda item 4.02, personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Agenda item 4.03 is an information-only item. Policy IFI 605.09, teaching about religion.
And before Ms. Kutchis gets started, we've got 5 policies coming before you. The first is a second reading, so there's no presentation regarding the second reading of this policy. The next 4 in line, and as staff will come and go from the table as appropriate, there'll be a brief presentation introducing you to each of those first readings.
Are there any board comments on item 4.03, second reading? Are there any public comments? And I see that there were no public comments received during the 30-day posting on the website, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then we'll move on to 4.04.
The Division of Curriculum and Instruction brings policy KBB, Family Life and Human Sexuality Advisory Committee, to you for first reading. This policy was last updated January 20th, 1993. The revisions to the policy provide updated information regarding the COMA requirement for such a committee. Accompanying the policy, you will find a new regulation that explains the procedures for the review and evaluation of instructional materials selected to support the Family Life and Human Sexuality curriculum. The policy will be posted on the website for 30 days for public comment, and we welcome any questions you may have about this policy and regulation.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. I just have really 2 points. Thank you very much for putting this together, taking the time to really make this happen. As we discussed a little bit at the policy committee, one of the concerns that I had was this review and evaluation center. If you look at page 2 of 3 of the regulation, number 8, we talk about the materials are going to be up for 60 days for interested citizens and Board of Education members to have adequate time. What we talked a little bit about was, well, where is that review and evaluation center? It's my understanding it's located, at least I thought what we talked about, way out on the peninsula of Chesapeake High School and the Chesapeake compound. And for me, the board pays me $6,000 a year so that I can get in my car and I can drive all over this county. I'm not so sure that everybody in this county that considers this to be important can always get out to the Chesapeake Peninsula. So I don't know if the right language is relative to 30 days up there and 30 days somewhere else in our county. We talked about this during the policy committee, but it concerns me that we put it in one extreme location up and east, and not necessarily so that everybody in our county can have an opportunity to be able to see it. So that if you can look into that again, we talked about it at the policy committee. I asked you to look into it kind of that time. I'm sure you did. I'm not advocating that we need to have 2 copies of this because that does incur additional costs. But what I am saying is we have to be able to make it available across. This is a north to south county. And while it's easy for me to drive, it's not necessarily easy for folks in Annapolis or in the southern part of the county to get all the way to the Chesapeake cluster or Chesapeake High School in order to review this material.
And Mr. Jackson, we did respectfully share that with the Division of Curriculum and Instruction and are, looking at ways so that there is availability for all materials. The regulatory language didn't change as a result, and we can take a look at that again before this comes back for second reading. But we felt that it was broad enough so that if we did do something different internally, the language was still okay.
Okay. And then, 3 of 3 talks about schools shall provide special opportunities for parents and guardians to view all instructional materials. This was at the very end, number 13. You addressed it at the committee meeting of what that really means. For the benefit of the public, can you please address what that paragraph is really addressing? Because it's not written here.
Okay. We have different ways for parents to see it. They could contact me. Majority of the time they contact the teacher, and the teacher will have the materials at the back to school night. Usually that's the most popular way. If not back to school night, if the parent can't make it, they'll contact the school and go to the school. And if that doesn't work, they contact me and I'll be available.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Mrs. Ritchie?
So why is it at Chesapeake? I mean, I love Chesapeake, but it's like at the end of the peninsula. I mean, it's not even like centrally, it's difficult even for people there. So why is it why is Chesapeake,
That's where the resource center is.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just add, and Mr. Sheknovich wants to add anything to it, and let's see if I'm right, and then throw something at me if I'm not. It's where the space is. It used to be at Annapolis Middle. Mm-hmm. So our resource center was at Annapolis Middle, which may be closer for some or further from others if you live out on the peninsula, live out in Pasadena. But as we went to the shift to utilize Annapolis Middle for our elementary schools that are going through renovation, Mills Parole, Annapolis Elementary, I mean not Mills, but Annapolis Elementary, and then now West Annapolis, we picked up and moved the resource center out to where we had space, which is Chesapeake Bay Middle. And we have used that for alternate space also as we rotated through elementary schools. It's where we had space.
Then I guess the follow-up is, how many people go?
I've been here for 3 years, and I have not heard of anybody going there yet.
Okay.
To review materials. But we have
review.
people that go there every day to work.
Yeah.
We have people that go there every day to work.
Yes, I know.
really
I'm behind
nice.
them on the way out.
They drive there every day and they're working really hard.
Yes.
But folks to go
Yes.
review materials at
Yes.
specific
Let me
requests
correct myself.
have been zero.
Nobody went to look at our materials.
I mean, I'm just saying
Yes.
that I just wonder if that's, I mean, and it's been a while since my child was in high school, but I remember there was an information day. We had to come in
Yes.
and watch something and read something, and I don't remember, but I mean, I remember we had to do it. That's all I remember.
When I was with C&I, my experiences were that people were going out to the resource center, even when it was Annapolis Middle to review. But it was happening and is happening at individual schools when parents will say, I'd like to come and look at those materials that I understand my child will be engaged in, or meet with the principal or specialist to do that at individual schools as opposed to going out to the resource center. Is that appropriate?
Yes. Correct. Parents are contacting the teachers.
Reviews are occurring.
But that's the ones who are going out for the thing. This is the new materials, is that right? So anytime we have new materials coming up, that's what is at these places to
The new
look at.
materials are at the resource
So if I
center.
wanted to go, if you had a new book coming out and I wanted to look at it, and I would go to the Chesapeake Bay and I could look at it there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson?
So I was going to ask the question, Dr. Alato kind of somewhat answered it with respect to alternative means, which you say that the language here currently is broad enough to address other alternative means. One alternative mean would be I, as a parent, can contact my principal or my teacher and ask for the new materials that may be put out. Mr. Mosier, I'm sure, puts out a press release associated with it that says that this new material is available or something another. So do you contact as a parent, the principal of your school to be able to see that material if you can't get to the resource center? Since the current language you say is broad enough to handle whatever extenuating circumstances that are out there. Is that an example?
It's not one that I had thought of. It's certainly viable. I think we'll just take a look at it again before second reading because just looking at it again, maybe if there are new materials, it doesn't seem that the need's really there. So we need to just provide language that does provide an opportunity. Certainly the intent of the regulation is so that anyone who wants to take a look at it can. So we'll make sure that our language matches the intent before second reading, so we don't belabor that.
Well, I very much appreciate you all really taking a look at that, because the answer may be in your 3 years, nobody has come and looked at it because nobody can get there, nobody knows about it, or nobody cares about it. It could be any of those reasons that have caused us to get to a point where in 3 years, nobody's come and looked at new material. Thank you, ma'am.
Mrs. Birch?
The other thing a parent can do is after their 7th grader tells them that they're going to be talking about human sexuality for 21 more days, this marking period, which is mathematically impossible, you can just call Skip Lee, and Skip Lee will get you the information, and you find out that they're only doing human sexuality for 3 days in the entire marking period. So your 7th grader is just wrong and just horrified by the entire experience, just in general. So thank you, Skip, and thank you for whoever got him the information. I really appreciate it.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Patty says no. Item 4.05, the advisory committees to the board.
The Office of the Superintendent brings policy KB advisory committees to the board to you for first reading. This policy was last revised December 6, 1989. The policy provides a structure and procedures for the creation and use of advisory committees established by the board for advice and recommendations related to specific educational tasks. This policy will be posted on our website for a 30-day public comment, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have about this policy.
I don't have any board questions. Are there any public questions? And I didn't mention after the last one that since these are first readings, they will then be posted on the website for 30 days for comment. So anybody who still wants to comment will have a chance. Okay, we'll move to 4.06. Citizens Advisory Committee policy.
The Office of School and Family Partnerships brings policy KBA Citizens Advisory Committee to you for first reading. This policy was last revised July 13th, 2011. This policy and its regulation provides the functions of the CAC as well as its composition and operational procedures. This policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment. We'll answer any questions you have about this policy and regulation.
Mrs. Ritchie.
My tablet just went out, so I think there was a part on there when you were doing it. I know that the ethics piece of that was, putting in there about the ethics piece, but I think you took out the part where if they miss any meetings and can you give me the rationale as to why that was done?
Absolutely, and that actually was a point of discussion at the policy committee meeting. So essentially, citizen advisory committee members can be removed for just cause, and we feel that the just cause language covers the absence, and that sort of gets into one specific kind of just cause, whereas there may be several others, and sometimes when you list something, someone will say, well, it's not on there, so this wasn't a type of just cause in which I could be removed. What we spoke with collaboratively with the CAC on this issue is that this is something that certainly in their internal documents, their their working procedures when they hold meetings and when they have qualifications for their members, et cetera, that this might be something that they want to address there if they still feel very strongly about that attendance piece.
Yeah, and because the whole point was to ensure that people are going to be coming and understand the obligation that this is not just a kind of willy-nilly thing, that we really want you to be doing the work and stuff. And so,
yeah,
okay,
yes,
that makes
and
sense.
based on the CAC's feedback that at the policy committee, they were still committed to this attendance piece.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, they've strongly committed to that this year, and actually already have notified people who have missed the first 2 meetings of what action. You will, I would expect that you might get a few comments. I believe most of the people on the CAC really do believe that the language is strong enough. There's a few that would like it to say still half of the meetings, but I think you'll hear a few comments on that.
Are there any public questions? Okay, we'll move to 4.07, Ethics and Conflict of Interest Policy.
The Office of the Superintendent brings policy BAF, Ethics and Conflict of Interest, to you for first reading. This policy was last revised February 1st, 2012. The revised policy provides formatting cleanup and terms for the suspension and removal of Ethics Committee panel members. This policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment. We will welcome any questions that you have about this policy and regulation.
We don't have any board questions or comments. How about, oh, we do. Mr. Jackson.
I just have really one, and this is really more for the board attorney. Mr. Bennett, one of the things that we were kind of told when we formulated this ethics policy was follow the ethics guidelines that were given to the districts if you want to get this approved by the Ethics Commission. Do we foresee any problems with the current changes that we have proposed with the Ethics Commission, because they're different from what they recommended?
As you'll remember, Mr. Jackson, the State Ethics Commission sent out essentially a boilerplate version of a Board of Education ethics policy. And the board didn't follow that to the letter, but followed it very closely. I would anticipate that if the board is going to revise the policy and if the regulations are going to be revised, it still will need to be sent to the State Ethics Commission for their review and approval. I would anticipate that because most of the changes that are being proposed are grammatical, frankly, or changing numbering of paragraphs or whatever, except for the provision about suspension or removal of a member of the ethics panel, I would expect that the Ethics Commission will just pro forma approve all of the technical changes to the policy. I think there's a possibility that the change that would allow removal or suspension may result in questions from the State Ethics Commission staff about why are you doing this? To which I think there's a good explanation. So I wouldn't be surprised, let's put it that way, if the State Ethics Commission staff doesn't call and say, why this change? To which we will give them a response.
I guess, do you think it's worthy to, being that this is in draft form, to have a conversation to say this is what we're moving towards as far as our first draft reading?
We certainly can do that. We still will have to send the final product to the State Ethics Commission, but we could certainly give them a heads up on here is a change that we're looking at making. We'd like to have your thoughts and comments on it.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any public comment? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4.08, the Eastport Elementary School Kindergarten Edition Design Development, and this is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. We now have an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Eastport Elementary School Kindergarten Edition Design Development.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. The next item is item 4.09, Georgetown East Elementary School Kindergarten Edition Design Development. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. We have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Georgetown East Elementary School Kindergarten Edition Design Development.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 4.10 is the Glen Burnie High School Open Space Enclosure Design Development. This is also an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move it from information to action? All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the approval of the Glen Burnie High School Open Space Enclosure Design Development.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? Mrs. Burge.
Remind me again, how many buildings is this affecting at Glen Burnie? Because, you know, it's a fun school. So.
3, D, A, and F.
Okay. Good for them.
Any public comment? We have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Item 5.01 is the strategic plan update, advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and honors participation in testing. This is a review item, and we have a staff presentation.
For today, it's yours. Good afternoon. For the record, I am Mary Talar, Assistant Superintendent for Advanced Studies and Programs, and I am thrilled to be here today with my incredible colleagues, Stephanie Kelly, Don Counts, and Mary Austin, to present the latest update to our strategic plan. Our focus is on AP, IB, and honors courses. Recognizing the role technology plays in the teaching and learning process, student engagement, we are providing the status update with a technology platform. In fact, with your support, we will be modeling how technology is being used in our classrooms. So at this time, we need you to sign in. Please put your name on the Chromebook. You can ignore the second line. Our nation is at a turning point. Today, we live in a technology-driven global marketplace, a marketplace where ideas and innovation outperform muscle and machine. In an age of digital content and global communications, we must build an educational system that meets the new demands of our time. Technology can help us create schools where every child has the opportunity to succeed while we work to close the achievement gap. Just like our educators, you have now been given a Chromebook for usage during this presentation. Educators throughout our county are using the tablets with interactive lessons. Interactive lessons provide real-time feedback from students. This ensures responsive instructional decision-making. At least 2 points during our presentation, you will be asked to personally engage, experience a formative assessment based on the presented content.
Mobile learning. It's a game changer for educators and our students. AACPS chose the Chromebooks as the student device for instruction and assessment. The Chromebooks meet the requirements of PARCC and also provide real-time information while promoting collaboration and creativity. All of our AACPS schools have received at least 2 Chromebook carts at the beginning of the school year to support our technology efforts. So today we're going to be using a web application that's accessible on multiple devices. You'll be accessing it through the Chromebooks, but it also can be used on iPads, laptops, etc. It will be delivering our presentation to you. Nearpod allows teachers to deliver their instruction to the student's device. Within the presentation, the teacher can embed audio, video, multimedia, web links, and formative assessment. This offers many opportunities for the flipped classroom. The assessment questions can be multiple types. You could have multiple choice, open-ended, multiple answer, and there's a draw-it feature, which is one of my favorites because students can show how the steps of a mathematical equation or to illustrate their answer. Results are instant and they allow the teacher to differentiate their instruction and plan lessons accordingly. Nearpod has a self-paced option also, which allows students to work at their own pace. Today, you will be watching our presentation and participating and engaging in our presentation via the Chromebooks.
About a year ago, Dr. McMahon and I did a presentation that described our journey toward increasing the number and diversity of students who were engaged in honors AP and IB courses. Just to refresh everyone's memory, we addressed 3 specific strategic indicators. And all of these are based on the expectations for students upon graduating from an Anne Arundel County high school. Strategic indicator 4 says that 80% of all diploma-bound students, by the time they graduate, will have completed at least one AP, Advanced Placement, International Baccalaureate, or honors course. The next indicator says of those students who were in either AP or IB, 100% of them will have taken at least one AP exam or IB exam during that time. Building upon that, strategic indicator 6 says that 75% of all students who have been in either AP or IB classes and have taken the exams at some point will have scored either a 3 or better on an AP exam or a 4 or better on the IB exam. And conventional wisdom is those are the desired scores, if for lack of a better term, the passing scores. The next slide will show you how we have progressed on this journey over the past several years. We have made tremendous gains in terms of the percentage of students who have taken at least one AP or IB or honors course. The strategic indicator says upon graduation, 80% of our students will have met this goal. As of 2014, all students that we have represented here have met or exceeded this goal. So we've made tremendous strides. We now have students accessing these courses. The old paradigms, the old barriers that indicated or suggested that advanced courses were only for a particular subset of our student population, those are no longer holding true. So we've made tremendous gains here. The next slide looks at just how the gap has shrunk. In 2006-07, we had a double-digit gap between the entire student population of both our African American students and farm students. As of 2014, there's still a very small gap. It has shrunk, but all students have improved, and as you see here, all students have met or exceeded our goal of 80%. So this is cause for celebration and a testimony to the hard work of our educators in Anne Arundel. Indicator 5 is on the next slide. Thank you. This shows the exam participation. Again, the gaps have shrunk quite a bit. We're still not there. We are still not at 100% participation in AP or IB exams. Again, we've made several efforts toward that. We are making sure that students know that these exams are not only available, but that success should be attainable. And if there are financial barriers, we are doing everything in our power to remove those and increase the awareness that that isn't and should not remain a barrier for participation. Now, this is our first Nearpod question, and you can have one or more answers to this. Over the past several years, more students have enrolled in AP, IB, or honors courses, The enrollment gap among student groups is shrinking. More AP and IB students are sitting for end-of-year exams. The exam participation gap among student groups is shrinking, or all of the above.
Please take a minute to look at the questions. More than one answer can be an option.
Your screens are also touch screen, so you can use the screen to touch it to fill in your answer.
Thank you.
You ready?
Okay.
Okay. There it is. There it is. What you experienced was a poll question. As you can see with our example, Teachers can immediately see whole group results, diagnostically revisit teaching techniques, and engage in reteaching within minutes based on the information. It's a poll question. No one right answer.
We still have a major challenge with Indicator 6, which states that of all students who have taken at least one AP or IB exam, they would have scores of 3 or better on AP, 4 or better on IB. It does appear here that the gap has increased, and there are reasons for that. We have a much higher number of students not only in these courses and sitting for the exams, but taking multiple courses and multiple exams. While it's not acceptable to have this gap, we have to bear in mind that we have really gotten 2/3 of the way on our journey. We have increased the enrollment in the courses, we have increased participation in exams, and now it's time to do the next and final step in this journey, which is to increase the scores. It is worth mentioning that multiple independent studies show that students who complete these high-level courses and sit for the comprehensive end-of-year exams, regardless of their scores, even if they don't make this desired benchmark, they are still much more likely to complete a college degree in 4 years, largely because they've had this experience of extremely rigorous coursework, studying, learning, thinking at a much higher level than perhaps they'd ever imagined possible, and sitting for this comprehensive end-of-year exam. And in some cases coming away with it from the experience saying, now I know what I need to do next year when it's college. So if you want to look at it as a dry run, for many students, that is the experience. That said, we are still working toward increasing these scores by not only supporting students, but increased access and variety of the professional development opportunities for all teachers, not just AP and IB, but all teachers K-12. So in summary, on the next slide, the results are inconsistent across the county. What we've looked at have been aggregate percentages for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Some courses, some schools, and some courses within those schools are meeting with more success than others. We still have a gap between what is measured within the classroom and what is measured by these end-of-year exams, largely shown when we look at a comparison of the percentage of AP students scoring a 3 or better versus the percentage of AP students getting an A or B on the report cards. There's much too big of a gap there. Too many students doing really well in the report cards but not ready for the exam because there's a mismatch in the instruction and how it's assessed within the classroom. And that is getting a great deal of attention from all of us. Ultimately, we want growth and success for all of our students. They're all on this journey together, and we want them to be successful travelers with a very memorable scrapbook of achievements to show for the journey when they're finished with education with us. And it's the teacher's role to navigate this journey and to help all students meet with success.
So, what are we doing to address our challenges and support all of our students in becoming independent learners who are capable of succeeding in our global society? Each year, school and system leaders are provided with AP and IB data profiles. Opportunities for professional development, networking, and collaboration with peers are provided on an ongoing basis and in a variety of formats. Our own master teachers, many of whom are trained IB and AP exam readers, provide support, strategies, and professional development to their colleagues. The annual Advanced Studies and Programs Professional Learning Summit features sessions on evidence-based strategies, understanding and applying grading rubrics, the benefits of using released exam questions and administering mock exams to students, and preparing and motivating students to be successful on the examinations. This fall, we're forming our first high school humanities teacher cohort that will collaborate and learn together around the idea of moving to student mastery. We continue to work on extending learning beyond the classroom through the use of technology, just as we did with you today, and collaboration continues between and among our offices. In the last 3 years, a variety of IB diploma program courses have been open to non-IB diploma students, allowing for greater access to high levels of instruction. And across the county, many of our AP students can benefit from online tutoring in addition to traditional face-to-face instruction. And finally, after school and Saturday, AP and IB practice sessions and labs are available, and frankly, developing a reputation for being productive and fun.
Over the last few months, I've heard the voices of many school leaders. They clearly believe post-secondary enrollment options should be recognized within the strategic plan as a rigorous course pathway along with AP and IB. inclusion of post-secondary enrollment, dual credit and/or Jumpstart, promotes college readiness, enhances course options, and enables our students to earn college credit while completing graduation requirements on time. Your turn to engage. Question number 2. This question is a multiple choice item. Please select the item you think is most accurate. Again, immediate feedback. Debbie, if you want to turn to the other slide. The next slide also shows that Nearpod enables teachers to dig deeper through student engagement and response details. Mastery and acceleration can easily become the instructional focus with regrouping practices that are differentiated based on these summary reports, all within a quick minute of time and assessment.
Last year, when Dr. McMahon and I did this presentation, we shared this quote from Miriam Beard: "Travel is more than the seeing of sights. It is the change that goes on, deep and permanent, in the ideas of living." And I think we can apply this metaphor to instruction. It's more than the learning of facts. It's building knowledge, building a vast array of experiences that a student draws upon for the rest of their lives, builds upon, and really, truly becomes a lifelong learner. And we are working toward that.
Expert learners. This concludes our presentation. We are open for any questions.
Mrs. Burge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good. I wanted to ask, and this was when you were talking about indicator 6, which of course is, where we said we needed the most work, and we were talking about one of the reasons that we think that it may be having more trouble there is because of the increase in number of students taking the courses. Of course, that's going to cause part of our problem. But one of the things you also said is the number of students taking a lot of classes. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are, just in general, on the impact of, and I don't know if it's happening in all of our schools or just some of our schools, the impact of perhaps over pushing AP classes and not over pushing them to a broad array of students, but over pushing it on individual students. We've had some of the colleges now say that it doesn't matter if you've taken 5 AP classes or 15, we're going to look at you the same. 5 is our number. And once you've taken 5 AP classes, we consider you to be a student who took AP classes. So to them, it doesn't matter that you took 14. And I'm wondering, if they are getting lower scores because it's hard to study for, 5 AP exams in a short period of time, how do you think that's impacting, and how do you think it's impacting our students and their lives?
That's a very good question, and one I've gotten before, both in a professional and public settings from friends who know what I do for a living. It really is a matter of balance. I don't want to limit a student. There are those high flyers out there who not only can handle an inordinate number of AP exams, but thrive on that. But for the average student, or the typical student, better term, there is a balance of academics, sports, having a job, having some sort of social life outside of school. And it really is, I think, a joint effort that involves teachers, that involves school counselors, administration, and families to decide what are the courses that really intrigue you? What are the things that inspire you as a student that you want to pursue in AP? I don't like seeing students stressed because of the vast number of AP courses, and those exams are squeezed into a 2-week window. So I just suggest balance. What are the areas that you are really passionate about? And that is one of the, I think, strengths of the AP program. The student who is the history buff can say, oh, I really don't want to take AP Calculus, I don't want to take AP Chemistry, but I do want to take AP US History, AP World History, and AP European History. The student who's more artistic might say, I'm really much more interested in AP Studio Art and AP Art History, or AP Music Theory. And you're right, there comes a point of diminishing returns, I think, in terms of college application. They want to see that students have stretched themselves. Colleges, for the most part, want to see that students have availed themselves of these advanced learning opportunities. But they also want to see balance. They want to see other experiences. And as a parent of a recent college graduate, the memory of all of the applications still kind of fresh in my I still kind of remember what it all involved, and it was a lot more than just how many AP courses and how many 3 or better on AP exams.
I just feel like, I'm so concerned for so many of our kids who it seems like if there's an AP course available, they're going to take it. And
It's an internal motivator.
Right, well, but I feel like at some point maybe it's our staff that needs to say, no. You're too stressed out at this point. And I don't know if they're all recognizing what our kids are going through, because I think there's a lot of them that are doing it because everyone else is doing it, and I've got to do it because I've got to keep up with everybody else. And, I want to make sure that while we're stressing that they stretch, that they not do too much. Right. And, we do need to put a high priority on it, but we need to make sure our staff are not saying, I need to keep my AP numbers up. There's a balance for our staff, too, that they need to recognize.
And there's that untapped potential of students not taking any AP courses.
Right, and I understand
and I
the
would rather
stretch for them,
right.
But I think sometimes our staff looks at the total numbers. Well, and how many classes did we have taken this year? Never mind that it was the same 50 kids taking most of them. And we just need to be careful because kids have it rough these days.
They do. And that's why when we look at AP data, what we are doing now, not looking at total AP enrollment, but number and percentage of students taking at least one AP course. And that's where we need the equity. It just needs to be spread out among more students, not more courses per student, but more students involved in the program and sampling the waters.
Could I add to that from an IB perspective? Just a student who's chosen the IB diploma pathway has already chosen that balance. They've chosen to do all the things that Don just addressed that an AP student might choose to do, because they are challenging themselves, because it's a requirement in 6 different areas, and they may or may not be experts in all of those 6 different areas. So one of the things we've been working very hard to educate our families on is the fact that in addition to an IB diploma, students do not need to take 4 AP classes in the spots where they have free time and or sit for additional AP exams. It's okay. You will still go to college or university with an IB diploma, or frankly with an IB diploma program experience. So this is an opportunity for education. So that's definitely something that we want families to feel comfortable with. They don't have to overdo.
Mrs. Ritchie.
Couple of things. One, to talk about that. First off, we've opened the experience. If we recall, there were not too many years ago where not all students were encouraged. We sort of pushed some students over here and some students over here, and now we've provided the opportunity for all students to be able to participate, and we've provided support for them and so forth. So I think our staff is doing an excellent job in encouraging and providing support. Sometimes I think that we as parents, we like to, we're looking at scholarships, we're looking at how much college is going to cost, and and so forth like that, and so it's very competitive to get into all those things and to get that stuff. So, I think that it's well balanced. I'm really excited that the fact that our school system has broadened the opportunities for students to be able to take as many if they want, and also the counselors have been able to talk to kids to say, maybe you need to think about not maybe doing this one, and allowing them to have the opportunity to take a non-AP course that will be fun for them to get some experience out of, because mom's not paying for fun when you get to college, And I love this presentation. I must be a closet geek. I can't do any of this stuff because it drives me crazy. It takes me like 5 hours to decide on a font to use. So my question is more technically, because I see you have somebody here who's Debbie, who's doing
Debbie,
all
right.
this, right?
Yes, Stephanie.
But the classroom teacher doesn't have that. So how hard is it to learn how to do this? And we're doing some professional development, I'm assuming.
It's very easy. If you can do a PowerPoint with no animations or anything, you just drag the PowerPoint into the web application, and then you publish it, it produces a code, and we took the liberty of filling in the code ahead of time for you, so
Sure.
you wouldn't have to do that, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, because as we've gone through our
Yes.
visits and stuff, we've seen teachers using technology, and some teachers are very apt at it, and they've just, you either get it or you don't get it. You know what I mean? And sometimes age is a barrier to that, but a lot of times it's not. It's a matter of some people are just adept at doing these kind of things, and they're very good at it. I'm not one of them. So to be able to see these, when you're talking about what happens on their plates, I think it's wonderful to be able to use all these applications in the classrooms and stuff.
Our office is proud to say that this year, for the first time, we have an e-coach in every school.
Oh, cool.
So, and they come for professional development multiple times during the year, and Nearpod is one of the ones that and the Chromebooks. We have a professional development for all our e-coaches coming up on October 14th, and they will be trained again, because they had it in the spring, but they'll be trained further in advanced parts to learn.
Right, because if they start to use it, I mean, if you get training and then you don't ever use it, then,
Correct.
whatever. And I love the assessment piece, because that is really
Formative
quick. It's,
assessment,
right then and there, we
Change
talk a lot
instruction.
about assessments, a lot about testing kids, but you know what? We've always done it. Now we have the ability here to be able to get it right away and to be able to correct what needs to
instruction
be corrected
diagnostically.
right away, and,
Right.
and ensure that they're going out of the classroom with the knowledge that we really need them to have.
And on the other part, too, the children are experiencing online assessment.
Yeah.
Which is preparing them for PARC.
Yeah.
Because we
yeah.
want it to be a part of the instruction
But
delivery
we
model.
stopped into this AP, was a AP history class. I don't know which one it was. Anyway, but the teacher, I digress. But anyway, this teacher was just doing this wonderful, and he had all these things he's pulled. I wanted to stay, but they made me leave. But I mean, he was pulling all these things up, and he had all this animation, and it was just, I thought, well, if I'd had that, I'd have probably taken AP history too. But it was great. So
Technology
thank
is
you.
very
Thank you
motivating. Definitely supports student engagement.
Mrs. Nally.
Well, I want to take this time to thank you all of you for this great presentation. But I really want to take a special time to thank my good friend Debbie Ray. She is not going to like me doing this. We started teaching together in 1984, I believe it was. And yes, and somewhere in there. And Debbie was in the computer labs. You can imagine that we were at the forefront of that. And Debbie was a fabulous teacher, and she has brought that instructional strength to her job now, and I really think that's important, and I want to thank her personally, and thank you for all that you've done. Thanks.
I also wanted to sort of echo what you were talking about with Indicator 4, the access to the AP IB courses, and as a college level instructor for a course that's equivalent to AP English Language, I've had a number of students that have come into my classroom. They didn't score well enough to pass out of the test, but they were the best prepared students that I ever had in my class, both from IB and AP. So I think it's really important for parents to understand that just sitting in those classes, even if the score isn't what they want at the end, it really makes their freshman college level experience much easier. Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, they all left. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The next item is item 5.02, award of contracts, and this is a review item. Do we have any board questions or comments on the contracts? Nope. Any public comment? All right. The next items on the agenda are consent items. Do I have a motion to move items 6.01 to 6.09 from information to action and bundle them? All those in favor? Motion passes. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see if I can get this right. I recommend that the Board of Education award contracts as stipulated in the agenda 6.01 through 6.09 inclusive.
Are there any board comments or questions? Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. I actually have two questions on two different items. Under 6.01, we talk about worksite landscaping and utilities for West Annapolis, and this particular awardee has had references that have had MBE goals of 30%, of which they've made them all except for Crofton Elementary School. But for some reason, the MBE goal is 25%, and they have only a preliminary achievement of 19.56% of that MBE goal of 25%. So I'd just like for somebody to explain to me why we went from a 30% MBE goal on these other projects, which are similar projects to some extent. Germantown Elementary School was a school rebuild, but Annapolis Elementary School was a revitalization or renovation or whatever, and Crofton Elementary School was the same. So why did we drop the 5% MBE goal?
Sure. Alex Sheknova, Chief Operating Officer, joined by Debbie Gross, Supervisor Purchasing. Remember, the participation in MSBE is really a function of two things: availability of the contracting community, so whether there is capacity to absorb the work, but then secondarily, it's the uniqueness of the site. West Annapolis, if you're familiar with it, is a very constrained site. There really are very few opportunities, unlike some of the other projects that had extensive landscaping, earthscaping, utility work, et cetera, to access it and to shape the ground around the building, et cetera. West Annapolis really does not have as many elements that could be subcontracted out or not essentially self-performed by the one contractor. So it's essentially disadvantaged when compared to like a Crofton or to a West Annapolis, to Annapolis Elementary School or to Germantown, with, again, the variety, the scope, and the size, the types of opportunities that are available out there. Annapolis Elementary School, you would think, would probably be similar, but if you drove by Annapolis Elementary School, we did a lot of site work there because we were connecting the buildings and had a lot of elevation changes. West Annapolis, we're not really expanding the envelope of the building much. We're not doing many significant changes site-wise. All the utilities are really already right there. Even our opportunity to landscape, it's such a small site, there will be
minimal
the bare
landscape.
minimum landscaping. So that's an example of something that we always have tremendous participation from the MSB community. That's a very good area for MSB participation, and yet that opportunity is just constrained because of the cards that we've been dealt there on that piece of property.
So we determined that 5% is acceptable from going from 35% to 25% in this particular project. That was an AACPS decision.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. The goal?
Correct.
Yeah, the goal, there's a goal-setting committee under the state statute that governs MSB. There's a goal-setting committee and a process and a vetting process that we have to do here in this jurisdiction as well as other jurisdictions. And they go through a fairly prescriptive computational methodology to arrive at what the goal is. And part of that goal is a recognition of the diminished availability of opportunities for MSB participation.
That committee is made up of, is that internal to AACPS or is that across the state for this particular project?
It's unique to each jurisdiction.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. And then on 6.06, this is the contract on the web-based benefits enrollment system cooperative agreement with Howard County. It's for $1.2 million, and we received the updated revised, which went from operating funds to actually internal service fund, an internal service fund. What is an internal service fund? So I understand.
Again, Alex Shekno, Chief Operating Officer, that's your healthcare fund.
Okay.
So all of the costs to run, administer, manage, and expense for our healthcare should be absorbed by the healthcare fund. This is clearly a healthcare-related thing and should not. It was an error on our part to inappropriately classify it as a general operating fund. It should be restricted to the healthcare fund.
Perfect. And where it says in number 2, method used to determine competitors for your requirements, Howard County, Maryland completed the RFP bid process. When did Howard County complete their RFP bid process?
I can get the exact date for
Just
you,
roughly.
but it was
Is it recently?
probably a month before this. They had recently completed that procurement.
Okay, so it's recently.
Right.
And then it says here, time is of the essence. Why is it such of the essence?
Because we're beginning our open enrollment season here soon, and our current contract with them runs up to the end of 2014 to December, but we need all the information for the new healthcare window. So all our open enrollment is right now. Healthcare administration begins January 1, and as Ms. Bozzella knows, we also have a lot of reporting requirements with the new healthcare acts that we need to gather information from here to report out to different, to the federal government and others, and we want to make sure that we have a seamless transition from the open enrollment cycle this October, November into the plan year, which begins January 15.
Okay, and just one final question, and that is, is this the same company that was doing it prior? Now we're going to Howard County and we're using their cooperative agreement to do. Is this the same company that was doing it before?
Yes, we've been using them since July of 2005. It was part of our Care First contract before, but Care First is no longer partnered with them, so we're entering in a separate contract, but we've been using them for 9 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Do we have any public comment? All right, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0-0. Before we conclude this portion of our meeting, I just have a few announcements. The next board policy committee meeting is Wednesday, October 15th at 8:30 in the morning. The next board outreach event is Wednesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. at the Wa Chapel Community Center. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. And the next board budget committee meeting is Tuesday, November 11th at 5 p.m. in conference room 2A. Mrs. Snell.
I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
All those in favor? Okay, this portion of the meeting is adjourned.